Chapter 1696. However, this could not be done in the 9 states. Although the 9 states had been promoted to a large realm for more than 10 years, many materials could not be produced in a short period of time. Lu Yi could not find suitable materials to make the scabbard. Perhaps he could go to the Jade Conch world to take a look? Although the Jade Conch world was not a top realm, it was still a large realm with a long history. The materials produced in the realm were not something the 9 states could compare to. If the 9 states was a wasteland that had just been cultivated, then the Jade Conch world was a piece of fertile land that had been cultivated for many years. The things that grew in the land were different. Moreover, Lu Yi also had the intention to go to the Jade Conch world. He had wanted to go to the Jade Conch world the last time he came back. However, at that time, his words did not carry much weight. It was better to let Wuxia do it. Now that he had promoted to Yu Yao, to a certain extent, the 9 states had the qualifications to be on par with the Qingli Dao world and the Jade Conch world. Moreover, the cultivators of the 3 realms at the 1,000 Elephant Sea lived in harmony and developed together. The momentum was good. Lu Yi felt that it was time to pay a visit to the boss of the galaxy. Now that he had returned by chance, Lu Yi planned to bring some people to the 1,000 Elephant Sea to strengthen the forces there. The 3-realm island was very big. There were 300 people in the 9 states, and 100 each in the Jade Conch world and the Qingli Dao world. A total of 500 people could not maintain such a large territory. The little constellation hall had always been useful. The 3-realm island was now at least a middle-level spirit island. Later on, it would become a superior-level spirit island. The sooner he brought people there, the sooner he could strengthen the defenses of the 3-realm island. Although the mermaid clan was the most reliable ally of the 3-realm island, he could not always rely on others. In the vast cultivation world, only self-improvement was true strength. He made up his mind. When he was done with the matters here, he would make a trip to the Jade Conch world. He could also make a trip to the Qingli Dao world and tell Wuxia about the situation in the 3-realm island so that he would not be worried. Without further thought, Lu Yi put away the Panshan saber and took out another item. White Moon Crystal. This item was used to improve the quality of the Dharma source and increase the efficiency of a cultivator's cultivation. Normally speaking, a newly advanced Yu Yao wouldn't need this kind of thing. Every new Yu Yao's cultivation source was basically enough to satisfy her cultivation needs. Only after her strength had improved would she need to upgrade the quality of her cultivation source. Lu Yi was different. If he did not have a talent tree and only relied on refining spirit jades to cultivate, his current source would definitely be enough. However, when he cultivated, he basically relied on the talent tree. His efficiency in refining spirit jades was not something that ordinary cultivators could compare with. Once the spiritual jades were refined and converted into spiritual energy, they would enter the body. Then one spiritual source would be required to convert it into magic power. If the quality of one's spiritual source was not high enough, it would naturally not be able to keep up with the requirements of cultivation. In the starry heavens, there were many things that could improve the quality of one's source of energy. The White Moon Crystal was only one of them. Its quality was not too good, but it was definitely not bad either. After all, it was something worth 10 or 20 million spirit jades. Refining this thing was very simple, just like refining spirit jades. Lu Yi sat upright and held the White Moon Crystal in one hand, carefully refining it. Very soon, he sensed that there was a warm feeling flowing through his body. That was the mysterious power contained in the White Moon Crystal. This kind of power was obviously fundamentally different from spiritual energy. The warm mystic power flowed into his spiritual source, like a drop of water falling into the sea. Very soon, it merged with his spiritual source, or rather, it was absorbed by his spiritual source. And during this process, the source of the technique was also undergoing slight changes. The external appearance of Lu Ye's spiritual source was a small flame. When the shape of this small flame changed, it was the time that his cultivation had a breakthrough. On the contrary, the quality of his spiritual source did not change the shape of the small flame. However, as the White Moon Crystal was refined, the small flame obviously became brighter. Several days later, the mystic power in the white moon crystal was completely consumed, and it became a useless rock. Lu Yi examined himself. His spiritual source was obviously much brighter than before. He was somewhat expectant, so he took out some spirit jades and urged the talent tree to refine them. Silently sensing, he discovered that with his current spiritual source, the efficiency of converting magic power was indeed a little faster than before. However, the speed was not much, only about 10%, which was still far from his requirements. But in the end, this was still a good start. From the looks of it, in the future, he still had to find some things that could improve the quality of his spiritual source. When the efficiency of his spiritual source conversion could keep up with his cultivation, then it would be perfect. However, Lu Yi felt that with the terrifying power of the talent tree, even if he upgraded his spiritual source to the highest quality, it would not be enough. He cultivated silently for a few days. On this day, Lu Yi was cultivating when he suddenly sensed that there was some strange movement outside. He hurriedly flashed out. Looking up, he saw a door open, and Hua Qianying's figure walked out from it. Since that day, Hua Qianying had returned to the flower world, and had not shown herself for the past few days. According to her, there were some disturbances when the flower world was being settled, so she needed to go back and deal with it. Lu Yi did not disturb her. Since she had shown up now, it should be settled. However, Lu Yi saw that her expression seemed to be a little anxious. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi asked with concern. Hua Qianying was indeed a little anxious, and it was the kind of anxiety that came from being lost. She did not bother to be polite with Lu Yi and said bluntly, "Fellow Taoist, please come with me to the flower world." Lu Yi immediately felt that something big must have happened in the flower world. His expression became serious, and he stepped forward. Soon he followed Hua Qianying into the flower world. As far as the eye could see, the flower world was still magnificent, like a fairyland, full of red and purple, competing with each other for beauty. The realm was peaceful and auspicious. In such a large realm, there were only more than 200 creatures living in it. Looking at the outside world, many precious and rare flowers and plants could be seen everywhere. Lu Yi was a little puzzled. The flower world seemed to be fine. He turned to look at Hua Qianying with a look of inquiry. Hua Qianying said, "Fellow Taoist, can't you feel that the flower world is different from before?" Lu Yi carefully sensed a little more and slowly shook his head. "I can't feel it." Hua Qianying said, "That's true. Fellow Taoist, you are not from this realm, so it is indeed difficult to sense it." "What happened?" Hua Qianying looked at him. "The flower world has given birth to a will." Lu Yi was stunned and even more puzzled. Isn't this a good thing? In theory, any realm could give birth to its own will of heaven and earth. Of course, according to the realm, the will of heaven and earth would be very different. The vast majority of wills that were born in domains were ignorant, and did not possess any thoughts or concepts. They were more like the rules of a domain, unconsciously maintaining the operation of the domain. Such a will of heaven and earth was undoubtedly the lowest level of wills. A very small portion of realms, although still ignorant, had a certain degree of thinking, such as the blood refinement realm. The will of these realms was very repulsive to outsiders. Once they were noticed, a repulsive force would descend, such as heavenly thunder or something. The situation in the 9 states was more special. Little 9 was born from the combination of the will of heaven and earth of the 9 states, and the vessel spirit of the Tianji compass. Although it often acted like a child in front of Lu Yi, it was undoubtedly the highest level of will of heaven and earth. Before Lu Yi, it had silently guarded the 9 states for tens of thousands of years. Without its secret protection and concealment, the existence of the 9 states would have been seen by the Qingli Dao world, or the Yuluo realm. It's a good thing. Hua Qianying nodded. As a living creature born in the flower realm, the flower clan could clearly sense the changes in the flower realm. A few days ago, the flower realm suddenly gave birth to its own will of heaven and earth, which surprised Hua Qianying. Once the flower realm had its own will, it would have a huge impact on the development of the entire realm, especially since the flower realm was now attached to a realm like the 9 states. However, what puzzled her was that, Not long after the birth of the flower realm's will of heaven and earth, she could not sense it. It was as if the flower realm's will of heaven and earth had suddenly disappeared into thin air. This made Hua Qianying panic. If the flower realm had not given birth to its will of heaven and earth, it would have been fine. However, now that the flower realm's will of heaven and earth had been born, it had mysteriously disappeared. Hua Qianying did not know what this meant. This matter concerned the entire flower realm. Hua Qianying studied it for several days, but did not have a clue. She could only ask Lu Yi for help. In her opinion, Lu Yi had been in the Wanxiang Sea, and now came to Yu Yao. He was experienced and knowledgeable and might know something. How could Lu Yi know anything? He didn't notice anything different about the flower world. After thinking for a moment, he asked, "Do you think that there is anything wrong with the flower realm now?" Hua Qianying shook her head. "I haven't found anything yet." It could even be said that the flower realm had only been attached to the 9 states for a few days, but it had already tasted the benefits. In the past, the flower realm was attached to an extremely low-level realm and could not obtain any benefits from that realm. However, it was different now. The flower realm and the 9 states complemented each other and could grow rapidly. Their prospects were promising. However, there was now a problem with the flower realm's will of heaven and earth. This made Hua Qianying very anxious. Since there is nothing wrong, why don't we wait and see? Perhaps the flower realm's will of heaven and earth has fallen into a deep sleep? It's like a newborn child who is addicted to sleep, Lu Yi said casually. Is that so? Hua Qianying was deep in thought. Although she felt that Lu Ye's words were not quite right, she really did not have a solution at the moment. This kind of matter was not something that could be solved by being anxious. Moreover, I see that you can open the realm. This means that there is nothing wrong with the flower realm itself. If something uncontrollable really happens to this realm, I'm afraid that you won't be able to open the realm portal so easily. You have a point. Hua Qianying felt that Lu Yi was right. She could still open the realm portal at will, and her connection with the flower realm had not weakened. It was just that she could not sense the flower realm's will of heaven and earth. Perhaps it was just as Lu Yi said. The flower realm's will of heaven and earth had just been born, and was relatively weak. It was in a deep sleep. If that was the case, then she only needed to wait. End of chapter. Chapter 1697. After comforting Hua Qianying, Lu Yi returned to the verdant bamboo peak. He planned to cultivate here for a while, and consolidate his cultivation. His previous breakthrough was a major breakthrough, but Lu Yi didn't have the time to cultivate, so he couldn't neglect consolidating his cultivation. He had spirit jades and hundreds of thousands of spirit crystals, which were more than enough for him to consolidate his cultivation. The following period was calm and peaceful. Lu Yi spent a total of 300,000 spirit jades to stabilize Yu Yao's cultivation. He didn't continue cultivating. If he really wanted to cultivate, returning to the Myriad Elephant Sea was the best choice. To him, cultivating with the help of spirit jades wasn't very efficient. He planned to go to the Jade Conch realm, to see the Yu Yao of the Jade Conch realm, and discuss with them, before bringing some people to the Myriad Elephant Sea. This matter couldn't be delayed. However, if he really did that, he would have to spend a few years on the road. After all, he could save a lot of time by passing through the ancestral land of the Soul Tribe. But he couldn't bring a large group of constellations with him. Hence, Lu Yi was a little hesitant. He didn't know if he should do that. He didn't need to worry about the kingdom of the 9 states for the time being. The flower realm was attached, and with the addition of Mu He and the Black Umbrella, the defensive power of the kingdom of the 9 states had increased by quite a bit. Ma Shangxi definitely couldn't stay here. Without Lu Yi watching over her, the heavens were high and the emperor was far away. Who knew if this vampire would have any thoughts he shouldn't have? Little Nine, Lu Yi called out softly. Before leaving, he still had to say goodbye to Little Nine. However, it was strange. Ever since Little Nine suddenly left last time, it hadn't come looking for him. Lu Yi didn't know what Little Nine was busy with. Little Nine wasn't like this in the past. The space in front of him distorted, and Little Nine in the form of a large white rabbit suddenly appeared. I'm here. What are you busy with? Lu Yi asked casually. Little Nine's smile was a little strange. Nothing. Lu Yi looked at it in confusion. He felt like something was wrong with little Nine. At this moment, behind little Nine's little head, an even smaller head suddenly popped out, and on that even smaller head, there was a little flower-shaped hat. Her skin was fair, as if carved from jade, and her small face had distinct facial features. Her large black eyes were filled with curiosity and ignorance as she timidly looked at Lu Yi. Her two small hands were grabbing little Nine's rabbit ears. Her body was hidden behind little Nine's head, making it hard to see her clearly. Lu Yi was stunned. After looking at the pair of eyes for a moment, Lu Yi asked in confusion, "What is this?" He had never seen such a creature before. What made Lu Yi even more curious was that he couldn't sense any aura of a living creature from the other party. Xiao Jiu's expression was clearly a little embarrassed as he explained to Lu Yi, "My new friend, Huan Yang." New friends? Lu Yi was confused. Little Jiu actually made friends? One had to know that in the 10,000 years of protection of the 9 provinces, only Lu Yi himself and the city lord of the celestial origin city knew of little Nine's existence. The others, even Feng Wujiang, only had some suspicions and had never truly seen little Nine. Little Nine actually made a new friend in the 9 prefectures? Lu Yi couldn't even tell what race this Huan Yang belonged to. Huan Yang, he's Lu Yi, the one I told you about. Don't be afraid, he's a good person. Little Nine said to Huan Yang. Huan Yang then stood up straight. But even if she stood up straight, she was only a few inches tall. She was obviously hiding behind little Nine's head just now. Huan Yang was wearing a hat that looked like a blooming flower on her head, and a green skirt on her body. However, rather than saying that it was a skirt, it was better to say that it was a combination of leaves. However, it looked seamless and fit her body very well. Even Huan Yang's slim waist was outlined. Ah! Huan Yang opened her mouth and made a sound. She didn't seem to know how to speak. However, Lu Yi felt that she should be greeting him, so he nodded at her. Lu Yi looked curious, and was about to ask where little Nine made this new friend. Suddenly, he looked at Huan Yang seriously, and then looked at little Nine. His eyes moved back and forth between Huan Yang and little Nine several times. The corner of Lu Yi's eyes twitched. Squeezing out a harmless smile, Lu Yi said, "Huan Yang, I want to talk to little Nine about something. You go play first." Huan Yang tilted her head, and looked at Lu Yi with a pair of ignorant eyes. Little Nine shook his body and said, "You wait for me on the side." Huan Yang obediently climbed down from little Nine's body. Her movement was very difficult. When she fell to the ground, she accidentally fell, which made Lu Yi's eyelids jump. After Huan Yang came down, Lu Yi picked up little Nine, and turned around to enter the bamboo house. "What's wrong?" Little Nine saw Lu Yi's sneaky appearance, as if he couldn't see anyone, and was somewhat at a loss. Lu Yi squatted down and looked at him with a serious expression. "You tell me honestly, your new friend, where did she come from?" Little Nine rolled his eyes. "I picked her up." "Fart." Lu Yi raised his hand and pointed at his head. "Do you really think I can't see anything? Huan Yang has an aura similar to yours." At first, Lu Yi didn't see anything, and was still guessing what race Huan Yang came from. His experience was not shallow now, but he had never seen a race like Huan Yang. Until he suddenly noticed that Huan Yang had an aura similar to little Nine's. Hee. Little Nine smiled awkwardly. "You already know, why are you still asking?" Really? Lu Yi was stunned. Even if he had guessed it, when little Nine admitted it, he still couldn't believe it. Huan Yang is the will of the flower world. And that's right. Little Nine readily admitted. Lu Yi's heart trembled. For a moment he didn't know what to say. The truth was out. A few days ago, Hua Qingying came to him to ask about the will of the flower world. She said she couldn't feel the existence of the will of the flower world. Lu Yi naturally thought that the will of the flower world had just been born and had fallen asleep. So Hua Qingying couldn't feel it. But in fact, this was not the case at all. Not only did the flower world give birth to the will of the flower world, but it was also the same as little Nine, giving birth to an extremely high-level will of the flower world. With Huan Yang by little Nine's side, it would be strange if Hua Qingying could feel it in the flower world. "Do you know that this is abduction?" Lu Yi looked at little Nine speechlessly. "This child has just been born, and you already abducted her out of the house. How can you do this? Her parents are very worried. Little Nine felt wronged. How could that be? I helped Huanyang's birth, so she is very close to me. I am preparing to send her back to the flower world after a period of time. Lu Yi looked at him from the corner of his eyes. How long is a period of time? Ah. Little Nine stammered. Ai. Lu Yi sighed. He didn't have the heart to scold him too much. Little Nine had always been alone until he appeared. Only then did he have someone to talk to. But ever since he left the 9 regions, he had become alone again. Now Huanyang had appeared. And in essence, she was an existence of the same nature as Little Nine. The World King Flower was attached to the 9 regions, so there was a natural closeness between them. For a will that had been alone for tens of thousands of years, the sudden appearance of such a companion naturally made it more cherished. Recently, Little Nine had disappeared without a trace. Lu Yi thought it was because he noticed that he was cultivating and didn't come to disturb him. It turned out that he had a new friend. This guy liked the new and forgot the old. What do you mean by you helped Huanyang's birth? Lu Yi asked again. Little Nine quickly explained. The World King Flower was placed in the 9 regions and attached to the 9 regions. In the process of fusing with each other, the World King Flower undoubtedly obtained some benefits, and these benefits promoted the birth of the will of the flower world. If there was no external interference, then the will of the world born in the flower world would only be the most basic will of the world. It wouldn't have its own thoughts, and it wouldn't be able to take form. But at that time, when the will of the flower world was about to be born, Little Nine sensed it and secretly gave it a push. With this push, Huanyang was born. In this process, Little Nine exerted a lot of effort, and it also caused a lot of damage to the foundation of the 9 regions. Therefore, the birth of Huanyang was not an inevitable result. It was basically Little Nine's credit. As a result, after the birth, Huanyang naturally had a great sense of intimacy with Little Nine. In recent days, the 2 wills of the world had been together. The snacks that Lu Yi brought back for Little Nine were all given to Huanyang by Little Nine. After Lu Yi heard this, he couldn't help but smile with joy. For some reason, he felt as if his mischievous brat had kidnapped a beautiful young lady from the outside. Although he felt a little sorry for the girl, the rice had already been cooked. Speaking of which, Little Jiao, are you a male or a female? Lu Yi asked as she reached out to examine Little Jiao. Little Nine dodged in embarrassment and said shyly, I am the combination of the will of the world and the artifact spirit. How can there be a male or female? That's true. Whether it was Little Nine or Huanyang, they were both abnormal creatures. There really wasn't any distinction between male and female. Although Huanyang looked like a little girl, it was just an external image. There's no need for you to be so sneaky. Just tell me directly, Lu Yi said again. The birth of Huanyang was not a bad thing. Hua Qianying would definitely be very happy if she knew. Now that she couldn't perceive the will of the world of the flower world, she probably wouldn't be able to sleep and eat well these days. I'm not sneaky. Little Nine was still stubborn. Forget it. My child was just born, and you took her away. Now you have to return her. Little Nine seemed a little unhappy. Fool. Lu Yi rubbed his head. The flower world is attached to the 9 regions. You and Huanyang can meet whenever you want. The flower clan can't stop you. What are you afraid of? In this small piece of land, there's no other will of the world that can snatch your love. What do you mean snatch my love? Little Nine tried to defend himself, his rabbit face turning red. Lu Yi chuckled. This was also good. When he was outside, he had always been thinking about Little Nine. Now that there was Huanyang, Little Nine would not be lonely in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 1698. In the flower world, Little Nine was lying quietly on the side. Huanyang was sitting on Little Nine's body, just like what Lu Yi saw just now. She grabbed Little Nine's rabbit ears with her 2 small hands and looked around timidly. Lu Yi stood aside and talked to Hua Qianying in detail. The tall Mu-He in black umbrella looked at Little Nine and Huanyang with relish. That's the situation. Lu Yi looked helpless. I only found out today. Fellow Taoist Hua, I'm really sorry to have caused you trouble. When Lu Yi spoke, Hua Qianying's eyes never left the little Huanyang. Her eyes were shining. Hearing this, she quickly said, "Fellow Taoist, you're too serious. You didn't know about what happened before. Moreover, the birth of Huanyang was greatly aided by the will of your world. Speaking of which, this is Huanyang's opportunity, and also our flower race's opportunity. We should thank you. The highest level of will of the world. There weren't many in the entire starry sky, but now there were two in front of her, and one of them was from the flower world." Hua Qianying's mood was surging. She increasingly felt that it was a wise decision to let the World King flower attach to 9 regions. She bent down, stretched out her hand to Huanyang, and called softly, "Huanyang." Huanyang still looked timid. She looked at her cautiously, but she didn't mean to pay attention to her. Instead, her 2 small hands grabbed the rabbit ears even tighter. Lu Yi clearly felt that little Nine was a little proud, and couldn't help but kick it. Little Nine shook its body and said, "Go, it's okay." Huanyang let go of the rabbit ears, lifted her little skirt with both hands, and stood on Hua Qianying's hand. Hua Qianying was not happy. Instead, she felt a little sad. Her own will of the world was not close to her. Instead, it obeyed the will of the world of another family. How could this be? But in any case, the birth of a will of the world like Huanyang was a great thing. Hua Qianying could already foresee the beautiful future of the flower world. "You guys talk, I'll go first," Lu Yi said, grabbed little Nine, and returned to 9 regions through the portal. In the bamboo house, Lu Yi looked at little Nine and said, "I'm going to Jade Snail. Take care of 9 regions. Don't just focus on little Huanyang." Little Nine's rabbit ears drooped as it said listlessly, "Got it." He looked like a young man who had been separated by a stick. Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. "The future is long. Why are you in such a hurry? Moreover, Huanyang is still so young. You should raise her a little. As long as Jojo and the flower world are not separated, you two will never be separated." The rabbit's ears perked up again. Little Nine's spirit was aroused. "You're right." Lu Yi rubbed its head, and couldn't help but fall into deep contemplation. Should I bring people to the Myriad Ocean? With his previous experience, this trip would definitely be easier than the previous one. Furthermore, his cultivation had already reached Yuyao, so his ability to deal with danger was much stronger than before. Other things aside, the risk of passing through the chaotic explosion zone was definitely lower than the previous time. However, this journey would take several years, so it would take some time. After thinking about it for a long time, Lu Yi decided to bring some people over. After he brought people to the 10,000 Elephant Sea last time, the constellations that stayed behind in the 9 prefectures were eagerly waiting for him. It was not easy for him to make a trip back, so it would be unreasonable if he did not bring some people over. It would be a few years, so it would be a good time to cultivate on the road. After making up his mind, Lu Yi spread out his divine sense and sent a message to the Guardian Hall. Soon, Guardian Zhang Yuan's side started to act, and news spread everywhere. In just a few days, the candidates for the 300 constellations were confirmed. They gathered at the Guardian Hall and waited excitedly. Last time, 300 people went to the 9 prefectures. This time, Lu Yi decided to bring another 300 people over. As for how many people the Qingli Dao world and Yulua would send, Lu Yi did not care. It would depend on Wuxia and Yuluo's Yuyao. Of course, too many people would not do. Although the 3-world island was big, there was a limit. Furthermore, the 3-world island had just been established, so its financial resources were limited. If too many people went, the demand for cultivation would increase. Everything was ready. Just as Lu Yi was about to leave for the Guardian Hall, Little Nine suddenly came to find him. Lu Yi, are you leaving?" Little Nine naturally knew about the movements in the 9 prefectures in the past few days. "I'm leaving. Take good care of the 9 prefectures." Lu Yi nodded. The last time he left, he was still a little worried about Little Nine. This time there was no need. With Huanyang around, Little Nine would never be lonely. Little Nine said, "Wait, come with me to the flower world." "What's the matter?" "You'll know when you get there." As soon as Little Nine finished speaking, a door appeared in front of them. It was obviously opened by Huanyang. Little Nine took the lead and went in. Lu Yi followed closely behind. In the flower world, Lu Yi appeared. Hua Qianying immediately rushed over. The little Huan Yang sat on her shoulder, swinging her legs leisurely. After a few days of getting along, Huan Yang and Hua Qianying were familiar with each other. What's more, Hua Qianying was the first living creature born in this flower world. They also had a natural closeness. After Lu Yi greeted Hua Qianying asked, "What are you doing?" Lu Yi shook his head. "Little Nine asked me to come." Hua Qianying said, "Huan Yang asked me to come." The two looked at each other, not knowing what the two little guys were up to. Little Nine jumped up and sat on Lu Yi's shoulder like Huan Yang. She said, "Huan Yang wants to give you a gift." Lu Yi was surprised. Huan Yang wants to give me a gift. This was something to look forward to. Little Nine looked at Huan Yang. "Let's start." Huan Yang's body floated up from Hua Qianying's shoulder, then came to Lu Yi's side and circled around him. She then stuck to his hanging arm and softly said, "Ah, roll up your sleeves." Little Nine said, conveying Huan Yang's meaning. Lu Yi laughed and rolled up his sleeves. He wanted to see what the little Huan Yang wanted to give him. Huan Yang raised her two small hands and pressed them on Lu Yi's arm. The next moment, Huan Yang's body emitted a green light, and the flower world shook. Hua Qianying's face changed. She immediately noticed that the flower world's foundation was being consumed at a crazy rate. "Yeah!" Little Huan Yang cried again, and the flower world shook even more. Lu Yi's expression also became solemn. Little Nine said that Huan Yang wanted to give him a gift, but he didn't take it seriously. Even if Huan Yang was the manifestation of the flower world's will, the flower world was only a large realm. Therefore, Lu Yi thought that Huan Yang's gift wouldn't be too valuable. But now, this scene made him understand that this gift might be somewhat extraordinary. With the flower world shaking, and a large amount of foundation being consumed, Lu Yi clearly felt that there was something on his arm. Carefully sensing it, his expression shook. A moment later, Huan Yang flew back to Hua Qianying's side panting. Hua Qianying held her in the palm of her hand. Her small face was pale, and it seemed that she had consumed a lot of foundation. Although Hua Qianying knew that this was caused by the flower world's foundation being consumed too much, and that Huan Yang was actually fine, she couldn't help but worry. But in the next moment, the flower world shook again. Hua Qianying was shocked to discover that the foundation of the flower world was rapidly being replenished. She quickly looked at Little Nine and saw that Little Nine had closed his eyes, and there was a strange power fluctuating around his body. This was obviously Little Nine, using the foundation of the 9 provinces to make up for the flower world's loss. In this way, although the foundation of the 9 provinces would be consumed, it would be much easier for the 9 provinces to replenish it than the flower world. At this moment, Lu Yi was looking down at his arm. There was a flower-like tattoo on his arm. The appearance of the flower was exactly the same as the World King flower. Carefully sensing it, he found that the inside of the tattoo was actually a space, a small world. Lu Yi immediately understood what the essence of the tattoo was. It was actually a small world. When he first obtained the flower world, the World King flower was placed on top of the 7-colored divine lotus. In that state, the flower world was actually a small world, because even a late-stage Yu Yao like Ma Shangxi could be stored inside. Of course, in comparison, the flower world he had now could only be regarded as a small flower world. It was completely incomparable to the real flower world in terms of size. Lu Yi quickly realized that this small flower world could hold a lot of people, but the number was not fixed. It was related to one's cultivation. The higher one's cultivation, the fewer people it could hold, and vice versa. As for how many people it could hold, he still needed to test it. Little Nine had just asked him if he was going to leave the 9 provinces, and now he brought Huan Yang to give him such a big gift. It was obvious that he had long planned this. Lu Yi really didn't know that Huan Yang had such an ability. Looking at Hua Qianying's expression, she obviously didn't know either. However, Little Nine had been with Huan Yang for a period of time recently, so his understanding of Huan Yang was undoubtedly incomparable to others. Lu Yi understood that although this gift was made by Huan Yang, it was absolutely impossible that Little Nine didn't secretly instigate it. Such a big gift could be said to have come at the right time. With such a small world, he could store the constellations in the 9 provinces and use the soul race's ancestral land to rush to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, saving a lot of time. Lu Yi raised his head and asked Hua Qianying, "Is Huanyang all right?" Hua Qianying shook her head. "It's nothing serious. The flower world's lost foundation has been recovered." "That's good." Lu Yi nodded. If the flower world suffered any losses because of this gift, Lu Yi would really feel apologetic. However, Little Nine was still very reliable. "Fellow Taoist Hua, I plan to return to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Does fellow Taoist want to come with me?" Lu Yi asked. If Hua Qianying could come with him to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he would have more leeway in alchemy. Currently, the 3-world island only refined treasure body pills and spirit refining pills. Moreover, they were refined with the help of the pill gourd. However, cultivators didn't need these 2 kinds of spirit pills for cultivation. Moreover, the number of spirit pills refined from the pill gourd was limited. He had to sell them to the mermaid clan, and also for his own people to cultivate. Currently, he could satisfy his needs, but once he brought more to the 3-world island, he might not be able to satisfy his needs. If Hua Qianying could go, she would definitely be able to cultivate a large number of outstanding alchemists for the 3-world island, which would be beneficial for the future. End of chapter. Chapter 1699. Hua Qianying thought for a moment and shook her head. "I won't go for now. The flower world has just settled down, and Huanyang has just been born. I want to stay here for a while. We'll talk about it later." "All right, then I'll have to trouble you to take care of the 9 states." After leaving the flower world with Little Nine, Lu Yi hugged it and rubbed it. "Well done." Hee. Little Nine smiled proudly. "Now you won't have to spend so much time on the road." Little Nine knew the route from the 9 states to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Lu Yi had told it about the details, so after learning about Huanyang's ability, Little Nine was tempted. Lu Yi was now Yu Yao, and he had a blood servant Ma Shangxi. With just the 2 of them, the time it would take to travel was much faster and more convenient than carrying a group of constellations. Without mentioning anything else, just passing through the chaotic explosion zone would reduce the risk to the minimum. Huanyang was naturally obedient to Little Nine. Thus, under Little Nine's urging, Lu Yi received the Little Flower World as a gift. However, Little Nine didn't know that its and Huanyang's actions this time would be of greater help than it expected, because with the Little Flower World, Lu Yi wouldn't have to take the previous route to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. She could use the soul race's ancestral land. This would save more time and energy. With this thought, Lu Yi had already formulated a plan to rush to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the Heaven Continent, in front of the 9 States Guard Palace, 300 constellations were gathered together, looking forward to it. A figure appeared out of thin air. The constellations looked over. Who else could it be but Lu Yi? They all excitedly greeted her. Lu Yi exchanged some pleasantries with them, then directly opened the door to the Little Flower World. Although the constellations didn't know what it was, they still eagerly entered one by one. After a short while, the 300 constellations all entered the Little Flower World. Lu Yi silently sensed for a moment, and found that according to the size of the Little Flower World, the early stage constellations of the 9 states should be able to accommodate about 500 people. In other words, the Little Flower World could accommodate about 800 early stage constellations. If these constellations were replaced with middle or late stage constellations, the number of people it could accommodate would be reduced by a lot. If it accommodated Yu Yao, the number would be even lower. Zhang Yuan looked at Lu Yi bitterly. "Lu Yi, next time you come back, you must bring me along." He also wanted to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Unfortunately, the 1-year deadline for the Guardian was not up yet. In the end, he did not even have the chance to draw lots. Lu Yi smiled and readily agreed. Okay. Now that he had the Little Flower Realm, and could use the Hun clan's ancestral land to travel between the myriad phenomenon sea and the 9 prefectures, it was not as troublesome as before. After bidding farewell to Zhang Yuan, Lu Ye's figure soared into the sky. Soon, he met up with Ma Shangxi, who was waiting outside 9 regions. Lu Yi gave him Yu Luo's star chart and told him to follow the route of the star chart. The star boat morphed into a streak of light and sped off into the depths of the starry river. The last time she left, Lu Yi was a little worried about little 9. But this time, she didn't have to worry about it at all. With Huan Yang as its companion, it would no longer be as lonely as before. Lu Yi planned to make a trip to the Qingli Dao world to meet Wuxia. If the Qingli Dao world was willing, he could help bring some people to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Of course, if Wuxia did not have this intention, then it was fine. With Ma Shangxi, who was at the peak of Yuyao, steering the planetary boat, Lu Yi was much less worried. He focused on refining the spirit jade and cultivating. At the same time, he divided his attention and used the power of the talent tree to deduce the spirit inscriptions. After all these years of hard work, he had basically deduced most of the spirit inscriptions that he had previously possessed. Naturally, he did not need to waste his energy to deduce some spirit inscriptions that were not very useful. The spirit inscription that he was deducing now was none other than the spirit inscription of the saber draw. This spirit inscription that Wang Xiu had passed down was very strange. It should be something that he had researched himself. However, in Lu Ye's opinion, the entire spirit inscription was too bloated. It required too many yin and yang elements to construct it. Therefore, if he wanted to forge this spirit inscription into the scabbard, it would undoubtedly be better to simplify it. Of course, it would be even better if he could increase the power of the spirit inscription. With Lu Ye's own attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions, he naturally could not do this. As the creator of this spirit inscription, Wang Xiu's attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions were not something that Lu Yi could compare with. Naturally, it would not be that easy to improve the saber draw. However, with the help of the talent tree, it would be different. The talent tree's ability to deduce spirit inscriptions was mysterious and unparalleled. There was still a lot of hope for this matter. The last time Lu Yi rushed from the 9 states to the Qingli Dao world, it took nearly 3 months. However, this time, it took less than half a month. Lu Yi did not directly enter the Qingli Dao world. Instead, he greeted Wuxia outside the realm. After receiving his response, he entered the Qingli Dao world. This was also a kind of etiquette. Although the 3 realms of the Jade Snail Galaxy were very close to the Wanxiang Sea, and were as close as one, since he was a guest, he still needed to show the necessary etiquette. In front of the Divine Martial Hall, Wuxia looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. The planetary boat broke through the air and stopped not far away. Lu Yi jumped down from the planetary boat and spoke first. Hall Master Wu. Feeling the dermic power fluctuations that flashed across Lu Ye's body, Wuxia was stunned on the spot. His face was full of shock. You, how did you become Yu Yao? After their last encounter, he knew that the realm of 9 heavens was a newly promoted large-scale realm. It was already shocking that such a realm could produce a late-stage constellation realm cultivator in just over a decade. Today, when they met again, Lu Yi was already Yu Yao. Wuxia could not believe his eyes. However, the dermic power fluctuations could not be faked. Wuxia was sure that Lu Yi had definitely become Yu Yao. The Wanxiang Sea nurtures people. Lu Yi laughed casually. The corners of Wuxia's eyes twitched. No matter how well the legendary 10,000 Elephant Sea nurtured people, it was impossible for it to allow someone to reach the Yu Yao realm so quickly. Moreover, Wuxia strangely felt a trace of pressure from Lu Yi. This was under the premise that Lu Yi did not use any power. He vaguely felt that Lu Yi must have encountered some great fortuitous encounter. Otherwise, his cultivation would not have progressed so quickly. This is... Wuxia looked at Ma Shangxi, who was behind Lu Yi, and had put away her star boat. Another Yu Yao. Moreover, she was not an ordinary Yu Yao. Wuxia could clearly sense the depth of Ma Shangxi's foundation. Lu Yi explained, a friend. Ma Shangxi smiled at Wuxia and cupped her fists. Greetings, Hall Master Wu. Wuxia returned the greeting. You're too polite, fellow Taoist. He secretly guessed that this Yu Yao was probably a friend that Lu Yi had made in the Wanxiang Sea. Moreover, judging from their relationship, they seemed to be very close. In just a few short years, The junior who had bitterly endured under his pressure had transformed into someone who was qualified to sit on the same level as him. Wuxia could not help but feel a little dazed. Have I grown old? Please come in. Wuxia collected his thoughts and gestured with his hand. After a short while, both of them took their seats. Wuxia ordered someone to serve spirit fruits and fragrant tea. Then he asked, "How's the situation at the Wanxiang Sea?" In fact, he was still worried about the situation at the Wanxiang Sea. Unfortunately, he was too busy and could not personally investigate the situation there. Lu Yi nodded and said, "Everything's fine." Then he explained the situation at the Three-World Island. Wuxia could not help but feel a little dazed when he heard that the cultivators of the Three Realms had established a firm foothold there not long after they went there. Now they even had a mid-grade spiritual island. In his opinion, with the little foundation of the galaxy, it would be difficult to survive in the Wanxiang Sea. Even with the two Yu Yao, Tang Jun and Luan Xiaoa, it would be good enough if they could occupy a deserted island as a foothold. Who would have thought that they would occupy a mid-grade spiritual island in just a few years? Moreover, according to Lu Yi, the mid-grade spiritual island was still recovering. In the future, it might even become a high-grade spiritual island. What kind of luck was this? While he was excited, he could not help but worry. Like what you said, can the cultivators of the Three Realms defend the Three-World Island? He hadn't been to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but Lu Yi had talked a lot about the 10,000 Elephant Sea the last time he came. In addition, Tang Jun had asked Lu Yi to give him a jade slip that recorded a lot of information about the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Therefore, Wuxia had some understanding of the Wanxiang Sea. If the cultivators of the Three Realms had occupied a deserted island, there would not be any trouble. However, a mid-grade spiritual island would definitely be targeted. Don't worry about this, Hall Master Wu. The Three-World Island is not without support there. We still have an ally. Wuxia pondered for a moment and misunderstood. What about the cultivators of the Four-Way Galaxy? Lu Yi shook his head. A mermaid clan living in the Wanxiang Sea. The cultivators of the Four-Way Galaxy were causing trouble everywhere and had made many enemies. The Three-World Island could not have any contact with them for now. Living in the Wanxiang Sea, the mermaid clan. Wuxia was confused. Didn't they say that the Wanxiang Sea's water was so corrosive that even sunlight could not penetrate it? How could the mermaid clan live there? It's a long story. If there's a chance in the future, Hall Master Wu can go there personally and find out. Anyway, the defensive power of the Three-World Island is not weak. Ordinary forces would not be able to take it down. Lu Yi comforted him. I'm here this time to bring some people over to strengthen the strength of the Three-World Island. How many people can the Qingli Dao world send? Wuxia came back to his senses and did not answer directly. Instead he asked, "Have you been to the Jade Conch world?" Lu Yi shook his head. I came from my homeland and came here first. Next I'll go to the Jade Conch world. Wuxia understood and asked again, "How many people are you sending this time?" Lu Yi said, "Same as last time, 300 constellations." Wuxia heard and thought for a moment. How about 200? If that's not enough, we'll do the same as your world and send out 300 constellations. Lu Yi was the leader, and from the looks of it, the Three-World Island was developing well in the Wanxiang Sea. If possible, Wuxia naturally wanted to send more people over. However, as the leader, Lu Yi only brought 300 people from his own world. It was not good for the Qingli Dao world to send more people. There's no need for so many people. My ability is limited this time, and I can't bring so many people. Just like last time, send out 100 people. Although the Little Flower world could accommodate another 500 early-stage constellations, the Qingli Dao world would not send out all of them. There would definitely be mid-stage and late-stage constellations. Therefore, Lu Yi felt that 100 people was just right. After all, they still had to leave some places for the Jade Conch world. Okay. Wuxia did not think too much. If Lu Yi said 100 people, then 100 people. He immediately sent out a message and asked the constellations of the Qingli Dao world to prepare. End of chapter. Chapter 1700. After the matter was settled, Wuxia ordered people to set up a banquet to welcome Lu Yi. Lu Yi wanted to rush to the Jade Conch world as soon as possible, but since Wuxia was so enthusiastic, he could not refuse. It would only take one night anyway, so he agreed. Moreover, it would take some time for the Qingli Taoist world to select the 100 people. During the banquet, the three Yuyao toasted and drank happily. Wuxia wiped his mouth and put his arm around Lu Ye's shoulder. Junior brother, when we reach the three-world island, tell Tang Jun to come back and take my place. He is an old man with no future. Why should he stay in such a place? Ask him to come back and look after the house. I will go out and work hard. I promise to give the children of this world a good future. Okay. I will pass on the message. Lu Yi nodded. Tang Jun was indeed old and had no ambition, but Wuxia was different. He was in the prime of his life. Now that he had the chance, he wanted to give it a try, not only for the future of the Qingli Taoist world, but also for himself. Unfortunately, there were only 2 Yuyao in the Qingli Taoist world. Without Tang Jun, he had to stay behind. Since Wuxia had this idea, Lu Yi could help to convey it. As for what decision Tang Jun would make, it was not something he needed to worry about. The next day, as the door to the flower world opened, Wuxia was shocked. A small world? Lu Yi nodded. Keep them in the small world. It will be more convenient to travel. Wuxia finally understood why Lu Yi came alone this time. He thought that the 300 cultivators of the 9 states were on the way, but he did not expect them to have a small world. No wonder Lu Yi said yesterday that his ability was limited, and he could not bring too many people over. It was because of the size of the small world. Under Wuxia's command, more than 100 Yuyao from the Qingli Taoist world passed through the door and entered the little flower world. Lu Yi transmitted his voice and asked the Yuyao to take care of them. It was not very comfortable to stay in the little flower world. If it only accommodated one person, there was still some space to move around. However, with so many people squeezed in, there was not much space to move around. The Yuyao's Yuyao were basically in a state of meditation. Now that there were more than 100 Yuyao cultivators, it was even more cramped. However, since Lu Yi had spoken, the Yuyao's Yuyao, no matter what, everyone would have to survive on the three-world island in the future. They would have to help each other when they needed help. Let's go, Wuxia said. He was prepared to accompany Lu Yi to Jade Conch. This was something that had been finalized at the banquet last night. Because Lu Yi had never been to Jade Conch before, even if they had some cooperation, it would undoubtedly be easier to communicate with someone who was familiar with both sides acting as a bridge. Without saying a word, Ma Shangxi summoned her star boat. Lu Yi took the lead and boarded it, followed by Wuxia. Sir, then shall we set off? Ma Shangxi asked. He did not address Lu Yi as Saint Senior. As Lu Yi had requested, the title Sacred Master was too big, and it was easy for people to associate it with the vampires. Lu Yi wasn't afraid, but Ma Shangxi's identity couldn't be exposed. Let's go. Lu Yi raised his hand. Wuxia was sitting not far from Lu Yi, his expression uncertain. Last night, he had noticed that this Ma Shangxi Yuyao seemed to be very respectful to Lu Yi. How is this a friendship? From Wuxia's observation, the two of them had a master-servant relationship. Moreover, the one with a lower cultivation was the master, and the one with a higher cultivation was the servant. Wuxia really couldn't understand what was going on. If Lu Yi was really the young master of a top force, it would be understandable. However, the 9 heavens realm that Lu Yi came from was only a large realm. Where did he get this servant from? However, no matter what was going on, Lu Yi was Yuyao, and Ma Shangxi was a late-stage Yuyao. Even if the rest were all early-stage constellation masters, the 9 heavens realms foundation was still slightly better than the Qingli Dao worlds. This made Wuxia feel a sense of crisis. There were a total of 3 large realms in the galaxy. Jade Conch was the eldest, and the Qingli Dao world was originally the second. Now it had suddenly become the third. Wuxia wanted Tang Jun to come back and replace him in the realm. He wanted to go out and work hard. If he didn't work hard, he would lose his status in the future. Along the way, Wuxia had a lot on his mind. From time to time, he would chat with Ma Shangxi. As for Lu Yi, She was still cultivating and deducing spirit inscriptions. It was not far from the Qingli Dao world to the Jade Conch Galaxy. With Ma Shangxi's speed, they arrived in half a month. It was indeed very time-consuming for a cultivator to travel through the galaxy. However, as one's cultivation level increased, the efficiency of traveling would gradually increase. If one day, Lu Yi could become a sunshine cultivator, she might be able to travel through the entire Jade Conch Galaxy in less than half a month. Looking from afar, the Jade Conch Galaxy was a huge pale green planet. In terms of size, it was slightly larger than the 9 states. Before they got close, they could feel an extremely rich wood-type aura from the Jade Conch Galaxy. It was full of vitality. This was a seemingly healthy realm. If the 9 states were a toddler learning how to walk, then the Jade Conch Galaxy would be a strong young man. It had a long lifespan and a bright future. If there was an opportunity in the future, it might be able to become a top realm. Of course, there was not much hope. In the galaxy, there were only a few top realms that could nurture spirit jade veins. Not every large realm could grow to this stage. Are there very few cultivators in the Jade Conch Galaxy? Lu Yi asked. This was mainly because they were already near the Jade Conch Galaxy. However, Lu Yi did not see many active cultivators. There are quite a few. Any large realm would have a large number of constellations. After all, constellations are the foundation of a large realm. Something might have happened, Wuxia explained. Even if there were only a few of them, as the starboat approached, the 3 of them were discovered by the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators. Wuxia was a familiar face here. Therefore, the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators, who came to inquire about him, quickly passed on the news. Not long after, the starboat slowly landed in front of a hall at the top of a spirit mountain in the Jade Conch Galaxy. Wuxia was the first to jump down. Lu Yi followed closely behind. Ma Shangxi put away the starboat and stood quietly behind Lu Yi. An old man with white hair and a beard stood quietly in front of them. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he gave off the air of a transcendent being. However, Lu Yi had seen too much of the sect master. He had a feeling that this old man's clothes would tear apart at any moment and reveal his muscles. Realm Lord Cho. Wuxia cupped his fists and bowed. Sorry for the intrusion. On the way here, Wuxia had already told Lu Yi some things about the Jade Conch Galaxy. Therefore, Lu Yi had a basic understanding of the Yu Yao here. When he heard Wuxia's greeting, he knew that this old man was the realm lord of the Jade Conch Galaxy, Cho Wu, who was at the peak of the Yu Yao realm. However, although Cho Wu was already at the peak of the Yu Yao realm, he was already old. His condition was similar to Tang Jun's. Therefore, there was no hope for him to reach the Sunshine realm in this lifetime. In this regard, he was inferior to Ma Shangxi. Ma Shangxi was at the peak of the Yu Yao realm, and she still had hopes of reaching the Sunshine realm. Moreover, he could sense that her opportunity lay in the blood refinement realm. Unfortunately, Lu Yi did not allow her to go. Hall Master Wu. Cho Wu smiled warmly and returned the greeting. He looked past Wuxia and looked at Lu Yi. You must be Lu Yi of the 9 heavens, right? Lu Yi stepped forward. Greetings, Realm Lord Cho. Greetings, senior brothers and senior sisters. The 3 Yu Yaos beside Cho Wu also returned the greeting. They all looked at Lu Yi curiously. Lu Yi had not come to the Jade Conch Galaxy the last time they worked together. It was Wuxia who had gone there in his place. However, Lu Yi had managed to open up a path from their galaxy to the 10,000 Elephant Sea by himself. This naturally piqued the interest of these Yu Yaos. In any galaxy that strived for advancement, the value of such a path was immeasurable. The Jade Conch Galaxy actually attached great importance to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Although they had only mobilized 100 people, all of them were late-stage and mid-stage cultivators. There was not a single early-stage cultivator among them. Moreover, they were led by a late-stage Yu Yao like Luan Xiaoa. If they did not attach great importance to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they would not have mobilized such a lineup. Ever since Luan Xiaoa left with her team, there had been no news of her. The Jade Conch Galaxy also wanted to know what happened after that. Unfortunately, they did not have the opportunity to inquire. Today, Lu Yi had actually come with Wuxia. Therefore, The Yu Yaos who were still in the Jade Conch galaxy had all gathered here. Firstly, they wanted to see Lu Yi. Secondly, they wanted to know the current situation of their realm's cultivators. Heroes indeed come from the young. Cho Wu's eyes flashed as he praised. The other Yu Yaos also realized that Lu Ye's cultivation was not at the star constellation realm. He was at the Yu Yao's level. Originally, they had all come with the mentality of meeting a junior. However, if everyone's cultivation level was the same, then this kind of mentality was different. They looked at each other, then at Wuxia. The Nine Heavens realm had only become a large realm a dozen years ago. What was up with this Yu Yao? Realm Lord Cho, you flatter me. I'm still young, and my experience is still shallow. I still need the guidance of my senior brothers and senior sisters. Everyone praised him. Lu Yi naturally would not be stingy with a few flattering words. Junior brother Lu is too humble. When I was your age, I was only at the spirit ocean realm. A bald man to Cho Wu's right rubbed his head and smiled. Junior brother, you have a promising future. You will definitely achieve great things in the future. I hope so. Cho Wu then looked at Ma Shangxi, who was standing on Lu Ye's back. This fellow Taoist is. He could sense that this person, who seemed to be quiet and had no presence, was no weaker than him. He was definitely at the peak of the Yu Yao realm. Where did he come from? There was no such person in their galaxy. This time, Ma Shangxi did not wait for Lu Yi to introduce him. He said, Ma Shangxi, Lord Lu's servant. Greetings, lords. Lu Ye's eyes flashed. He saw through Ma Shangxi's thoughts and did not deny it. Ma Shang's thoughts were very simple. His respect for Lu Yi could not be concealed no matter what. Wuxia had already noticed some problems. His relationship with Lu Yi was not as simple as just friends. Since that was the case, he might as well make it clear and prevent others from guessing. End of chapter. Chapter 1701. Ma Shangxi's honesty shocked Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos. Servant? A peak Yu Yao servant? The few of them almost couldn't believe their ears and were stunned for a moment. But looking at Ma Shangxi's expression, they knew that he wasn't joking at all. In front of Lu Yi, he had indeed lowered himself very much, and even called them lords. Logically speaking, a peak Yu Yao like Ma Shangxi should be giving them face by calling them fellow cultivators. However, when he called them lords, Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos felt uncomfortable. The reason he called them that was obviously because Lu Yi had already addressed them as fellow disciples. If he called them fellow cultivators, where would that put Lu Yi? Cho Wu glanced at Wuxia, wondering what was going on. Wuxia only shook his head slowly. He was also a little confused. On the way here, he could see that Ma Shangxi was very respectful to Lu Yi. However, he didn't expect such a strong cultivator to call himself a servant so frankly. To have such a strong cultivator as a servant. Did Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens latch onto Rizhao's thigh? Wuxia couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. He wasn't the only one who thought so. Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos also thought so. Because this was the only reasonable explanation. Esteemed guests, there's no need to stand. Come in for a chat. Junior brother Lu, please. Cho Wu quickly adjusted his expression and gestured with his hand. In this short period of time, Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao's attitudes changed a few times. When they heard that Wuxia had brought Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens, they had come with the mentality of meeting an outstanding junior. However, when they saw that Lu Yi's cultivation had reached Yu Yao's level, they realized that they should treat each other as equals. With Ma Shangxi addressing him as Lord, Lu Yi instantly became an esteemed guest. Yu Conch and Yu Yao no longer dared to show the slightest bit of contempt. Although they didn't have such an attitude before, when the strong faced the weak, they would still have a sense of superiority. Thank you for your hospitality. Lu Yi's expression was normal. He nodded and walked in side by side with Lu Yi. In the main hall, everyone took their seats. Ma Shangxi sat quietly to the left of Lu Yi, truly assuming the posture of a servant. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Lu Yi finally got to know the few Yu Yao present. Jade Conch had more than just a few Yu Yaos. As the leader of this galaxy, although they had never produced a sunshine powerhouse, there were always around 10 Yu Yaos. According to Wuxia at their peak, there were 15 Yu Yaos in Jade Conch. For a veteran large domain, this was undoubtedly a very shallow foundation. For example, the unbounded realm that Lu Yi had gone to was also a large realm. However, not only was there sunshine, there were also plenty of Yu Yao there. Jade Conk's situation had to do with its remote location. It had never been connected to the mainstream of the cosmos, and it had never interacted with the other galaxies. It had always been fumbling around on its own in terms of cultivation. Secondly, the resources in the starry skies were limited. However, it was impossible for the Yu Yao to remain in the realms forever. Some Yu Yao liked to travel all over the place. Even the 9 prefectures' constellations spent most of their time in the starry skies, let alone the Yu Yao. After chatting for a while, Chou Wu finally asked about the situation at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Luan Xiaoa had led 100 elites to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the blink of an eye, there had been no news of her for a few years. Unfortunately, there was no way to gather information here. It would be a lie to say that they were not worried. Since Lu Yi had come this time, they naturally had to find out more about him. Lu Yi did not hide anything. He briefly recounted the battles they had encountered along the way to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. When they heard that the 3 Realms fleet had been involved in the battle between the 4 prefectures and the blood race, the Yu Yao present all paled. After all, according to Lu Yi, there were almost 10 sunshine powerhouses involved in that battle. The Yu Yao constellations were even more difficult to calculate. With the 3 Realms fleet's size, how could they have fared well if they had participated in the battle? Fortunately, although the outcome was not satisfactory, the 3 Realms fleet did not suffer too great of a loss. In the end, they survived the ordeal and continued on to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. They also learned that the 3 Realms cultivators had occupied a 3-realm island on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, and that everything was fine. Only then did they relax. However, the Jade Conch cultivators soon realized the problem Wu Zhuo had asked before. The 3 Realms cultivators did not have a strong foundation. Would they be able to defend a mid-level spirit island if they occupied it? Lu Yi also brought up the mermaid clan. This made them feel much more at ease. When Lu Yi said this, Chou Wu looked at Lu Yi with a complicated gaze. From this account, Chou Wu could tell that although the 3 Realms fleet had suffered some setbacks and some losses a few years ago, overall, it had been very smooth. It was even smoother for them to gain a foothold on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Chou Wu was indeed old, but that did not mean that he was senile. He knew that these smooth sailing did not come for no reason. How could things progress so smoothly in a place like the 10,000 Elephant Sea that was so competitive? He knew better than anyone else what kind of power Luan Xiaoa and the cultivator she had brought with her. She would definitely not be able to resolve any setbacks in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The people from the Green Dawn Dao world did not have this ability either. Then who could resolve these issues? The root of the problem was probably the young man in front of him. Chou Wu did not know what Lu Yi was capable of, but he knew that what Lu Yi had said was only a part of it. There were many things that he had not said. Other things aside, how could the mermaid clan that lived under the 10,000 Elephant Sea become the most solid ally of the 3 Realms island? Chou Wu increasingly felt that Lu Yi was not simple. He looked over and seemed to see a tall figure standing behind Lu Yi. Realm Lord Qiu, senior brothers and sisters, I came back this time because I want to bring another group of people to the 3-world island. Hall Master Wu has sent out 100 people, so I hope that your realm can send another 100 people. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is not peaceful. Our people can only rely on themselves there, said Lu Yi. He thought that Yu Luo would definitely not refuse this, because no one could resist the temptation of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He was even prepared for Yu Luo to ask him to bring more people over. Who would have thought that after hearing this, Chou Wu did not immediately respond. Instead, he showed a troubled expression. After a moment of silence, Chou Wu said, Junior brother, if you are not in a hurry, why don't you stay in the 3 realms for a few days? We will discuss it, and then give you an answer, okay? Lu Yi blinked. He did not understand what was going on. Why did he not accept a good thing that came knocking on his door? Did he not trust him? That did not make sense. Lu Yi did not sense any distrust from Chou Wu and the others. He did not think too much about it. He nodded and said, "No problem." What followed was idle chatter. The Yuluo domain's understanding of the 10,000 Elephant Sea was mostly conveyed by Wuxia last time, so they did not know much. Now that Lu Yi, who had been in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for many years, was in front of him, there were naturally many things he wanted to know. For a moment, the atmosphere was lively. Lu Yi also took the opportunity to ask, "Master Cho, do you have any suitable materials to forge a magic treasure?" Cho Wu heard this and said, "Junior brother wants to forge a magic treasure?" Lu Yi patted the mountain pan saber at his waist and said with a smile, "I have advanced to Yu Yao, so I need something handy. If you have any suitable materials, I can buy some." Actually, the best choice was to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to do this. There were many materials in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. As long as Lu Yi had spiritual jades, he could buy anything he wanted. However, what Lu Yi wanted to forge was not an ordinary scabbard. He wanted to cast the saber drawing/spirit pattern into the scabbard. The spirit pattern was extremely complicated. Lu Yi estimated that even a sunshine blacksmith might not be able to successfully forge it. Moreover, he could not find a blacksmith of that level. He could only do it himself. Lu Yi did not have much confidence in forging such a scabbard. Although he had some foundation in forging weapons, he had never put his heart into it. He did not know if he could succeed. Fortunately, he had the talent tree. This was an advantage that no blacksmith had. Therefore, regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he had to give it a try. He would just treat it as practice. When he had better materials in the future, it would not be too late to forge a better scabbard. Cho Wu said, "Junior brother, what kind of materials do you want?" After pondering for a moment, he said, "How about this? Let junior brother Han accompany you to the treasury. You can take whatever you like. Moreover, junior brother Han is the most outstanding artifact refiner in this world. If you have anything you want to forge, just ask him to help you forge it." Junior brother Han was called Han Dong. He was the bald man who spoke to Lu Yi when he first met him. Lu Yi had already met him. Lu Yi clasped his fists and said, "Thank you, Realm Lord Cho. I will definitely give you the spiritual jades needed for the materials." Cho Wu waved his hand and said, "Junior brother, after leaving the Wanxiang Sea, you did not keep it to yourself. Instead, you shared it with the Qingli Taoist world and Yukong. Your generosity is admirable. Speaking of which, Qingli and Yukong are indebted to you. If you like some materials, just take them. Don't mention the spiritual jades again." Although Lu Yi had dragged the Qingli Taoist world and the Jade Conch to the Wanxiang Sea with the intention of borrowing their strength, the two worlds had indeed received a favor in this matter. Some of the refining materials in the treasure vault were given away, but the Jade Conch was not so stingy as to take Lu Yi's spiritual jade. Hearing this, Lu Yi knew that even if he insisted, they would not accept the spiritual jades. He raised his cup and said, "Thank you, senior brother." After the banquet, the guests and the host enjoyed themselves. After the banquet, Lu Yi was arranged by Yukong to stay in a beautiful valley. Wuxia was also here to accompany him. The next day, before Lu Yi could take the initiative to speak, the bald Han Dong came up and said that he wanted to take Lu Yi to the treasury. Lu Yi took Ma Shangxi and followed him out. The Jade Conch sect also had its own treasury, but the treasury of a realm and the treasury of a sect could not be compared at all. The Jade Conch sect's treasury was divided into several levels, each of which was filled to the brim with good things. One of the levels was filled with materials for refining weapons. Most of these materials were bred by the Jade Conch world itself. Some of them were brought back by cultivators who went out and encountered in the starry sky. Lu Yi was dazzled and did not know what to do for a moment. End of chapter. Chapter 1702. Fortunately, Han Dong was a refiner and knew the materials here like the back of his hand. Seeing Lu Yi hesitate, he asked him what he needed. After learning that Lu Yi wanted to forge a magic treasure scabbard, he helped him take out some materials from the treasure house. Han Dong was very forthright and enthusiastic. After leading Lu Yi out of the treasure house, he said, "Let's go. I'll take you to the Tool Valley." That's where we forge weapons in this world." Immediately, the three of them rushed in the direction of the Tool Valley and soon arrived. When they arrived, Han Dong led Lu Yi down a passage. Lu Yi didn't know how far they went. During this time, Lu Yi even saw several rivers of magma flowing by, and the surrounding temperature was getting hotter and hotter. Generally speaking, refining places would be set up in a similar environment because they could use the power of the earth fire to better refine weapons. In the depths of the Tool Valley, there were many jade shell cultivators, bare-chested and sweating, refining weapons on a refining table. The deeper they went, the fewer cultivators there were. In the end, they couldn't see a single person. Han Dong took off his clothes, revealing his strong muscles, and pointed to a huge refining table. "This is where I refine weapons. If Junior Apprentice Brother doesn't mind, I can refine a magic treasure scabbard for Junior Apprentice Brother." This was not a boast. In the entire jade shell world, Han Dong's attainments in refining weapons were second to none. Most of the magic treasures in the jade shell world were made by him. Refining a scabbard without any difficulty was naturally as easy as pinching a conch for him. Lu Yi smiled. "Senior Apprentice Brother Han, what I want to refine is not an ordinary scabbard. Senior Apprentice Brother may not be able to refine it." Han Dong snorted when he heard this, but he didn't get angry. "Junior Apprentice Brother, are you looking down on me? Whether you can refine it or not, Junior Apprentice Brother first draw a path. In this world, if I can't refine it, then no one else can." He wanted Lu Yi to draw a path, because he wanted to ask Lu Yi what kind of restriction he wanted to refine in the scabbard. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then took out a jade board, inscribed a part of the sword draw spirit pattern, and handed it to Han Dong. Han Dong took it and examined it for a long time before falling into deep thought. As the most outstanding refiner in Jade Snail, he naturally dabbled in spiritual tattoos. However, what he dabbled in were all spiritual tattoos used in refining weapons. Even so, he could tell at a glance that the spiritual tattoo given by Lu Yi was incomplete. If an incomplete spirit rune was already so complicated, how complicated would it be if it was a complete spirit rune? He scratched his bald head. "It's a little difficult. Wasn't this a little F*** difficult? This wasn't something a human could refine." At the very least, Han Dong didn't think he had the ability to do so. It should be known that the twin branch spirit inscriptions were not as complicated as this one. But it was extremely difficult for the top forces in the Wanxiang Sea to decipher it. They had already mastered the twin branch spirit inscriptions, but if they wanted to use the spirit inscriptions to refine a disc array, even those top forces weapon refiners had to fumble for a long time before they had a certain success rate. This was also the reason why the price of the twin chi connected formation disc was so high above the myriad manifestation sea. It was because no tool refiner could refine it as easily as Lu Yi. Although Han Dong's refining skills were not bad, there was still a gap between him and the weapon refiners, who were carefully nurtured by the top forces. If he were to inscribe this spirit pattern on a jade board, he might have a chance of succeeding after trying thousands or tens of thousands of times. However, the difficulty of inscribing on a jade board and casting the spirit pattern into the scabbard was completely different. He wanted to ask what kind of spiritual tattoo this was, but he swallowed the words back down. Some things couldn't be inquired casually. This spiritual tattoo was so complicated that its power was unfathomable and extremely precious. "If Senior Brother Han has nothing to do, can you give me a few pointers here?" Lu Yi asked. Han Dong was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Junior Brother is also proficient in refining weapons? From Lu Yi's words, it was obvious that he wanted to do it himself. "I've learned a little," Lu Yi replied. Han Dong didn't know what to say. He had only learned a little, and yet he wanted to refine such a complicated spiritual tattoo. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, Lu Yi was now an important guest of Jade Snail. Han Dong couldn't say anything too unpleasant, so he could only say, "No problem. Anyway, I have nothing to do recently." He thought that after a few attempts, Lu Yi would give up after making no progress. In the following days, Lu Yi and Han Dong stayed in the deepest part of Tool Valley, Beside the refining table, Lu Ye's spiritual power surged endlessly. Han Dong soon discovered that Lu Yi did have some foundation in refining weapons. But he shouldn't have studied the way of refining weapons deeply. This could be seen from his many performances in refining weapons. Thinking about it, at such a young age, Yu Yao's cultivation must have been painstakingly cultivating every day. How could she have the time to study something like refining weapons? But as time passed, Han Dong became more and more shocked. Because Lu Ye's growth was extremely fast. It was as if he was born for refining weapons. What was even more precious was that Lu Ye's spiritual power was of the fire attribute, which was what a weapon refiner needed the most. Lu Ye's talent in the way of refining weapons was still very good. Otherwise, in the secret realm of 9 regions, Sword Tool Sect's Kong Kong would not have taught him the way of refining weapons. In the previous 9 regions era, Sword Tool Sect was extremely prosperous. The Sword Dao and Tools Dao of the sect were second to none in the entire 9 regions. Among them, the Sword Dao inheritance was obtained by Nian Yuxian, and the Tools Dao inheritance was taken out of the secret realm by Lu Yi and given to Ouyangzi of 9 regions. Lu Yi had the foundation taught by Kong Kong, and all kinds of refining techniques made Han Dong fascinated. Originally, Han Dong held the mentality of giving pointers, but after a few days of getting along, the state of the two became mutual discussions. In such an atmosphere, Lu Ye's refining skills naturally grew rapidly. However, it was not so easy to cast a suitable scabbard. It was very simple for him to refine the twin chi-linked array disc, because the most important thing about the array disc was the spirit pattern. The array disc itself was a carrier, so Lu Yi could just refine it casually. But the scabbard could not. Although it was also a carrier of the spirit pattern, if the refining was not good enough, once the accumulated power in the spirit pattern was too strong, the scabbard could not bear it. To ensure the quality of the scabbard, and to ensure the integrity of the spirit pattern, the combination of the two was not an ordinary difficulty. After spending half a month in the Tool Valley, Lu Yi began to really cast the scabbard. Han Dong was not optimistic about this. In his opinion, Lu Ye's refining skills were not even as good as his own. How could he possibly cast such a complicated spirit pattern? If he did not cast the spirit pattern, and only cast a scabbard, it would be meaningless at all. But what surprised him was that on the first try, Lu Yi had cast 10% progress. Although because of a small mistake, all the previous efforts were wasted, such a result was undoubtedly amazing. Han Dong was confused, because this kind of thing should not have happened at all. In his opinion, with Lu Ye's current refining skills, not to mention 10% progress, it was impossible to achieve even 5% progress. How could he know that Lu Yi had the talent tree? Even if his refining skills were not as good as his, he had a unique advantage when it came to casting spirit patterns. He tried again and again and failed again and again. His progress was high and low, but as long as he failed, he would have to start all over again. Fortunately, refining was different from refining pills. If he failed in refining pills, the furnace of spirit patterns would basically be destroyed. If he failed in refining, as long as the materials were not seriously damaged, he could go back to the furnace and start all over again. This was an advantage that refining pills could not compare to. Even so, the materials that Han Dong had brought out from the treasure trove had been severely depleted. He had no choice but to return to the treasure trove and bring back more materials. Lu Yi did not have any worries and went all out. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi had been in Jade Conch for almost 2 months. During these 2 months, he had failed countless times and had to start all over again. In the deepest part of the Tool Valley, in front of the huge refining table, Lu Yi held the newly cast scabbard in his hand and carefully examined it, his eyes blood red. After 2 months without sleep and rest, Lu Yi felt exhausted even after advancing to the Yu Yao realm. Fortunately, the scabbard was finally finished. Beside him, Han Dong's condition was even worse than his. His eye sockets were sunken, and his beard was unshaven. Han Dong's cultivation was not weak. He was at the Yu Yao realm middle stage, a minor realm higher than Lu Yi. However, one's cultivation realm was one's cultivation realm. One's foundation could not be determined by one's cultivation realm. Lu Yi had reached the peak of the constellation realm. In terms of physique, Han Dong was far inferior to him. At this moment, Han Dong was also looking at the scabbard. He smacked his lips and said, "It's not easy." He did not expect that it would take him 2 months to forge a scabbard. Fortunately, the results were not bad. It is not easy. Lu Yi examined the new scabbard. This thing was forged by him, just like the Pan Shan saber. It was pitch black and looked unremarkable. However, if one looked down on it because of its unremarkable appearance, one would have to pay the price. Lu Yi channeled a little of his transcendence energy into it. He immediately felt his transcendence energy flow along the lines of the spiritual inscriptions. He took the Pan Shan saber from his waist, unsheathed it, and inserted it into the new scabbard. He continued to nourish it with his transcendence energy. He looked at Han Dong and said, "Thank you, senior brother Han. You're welcome. I've also benefited a lot." During the exchange, Han Dong had indeed learned many things from Lu Yi. They originated from the sword instrument sect, and were things that Jade Snail's Blue Flag Street did not have. Han Dong felt that if he could understand these things, his attainments in refining would rise to another level. To a weapon refiner, this was undoubtedly extremely precious. "Let's go and have a drink," Lu Yi called out. Han Dong did not refuse. From beginning to end, he did not ask what the spiritual inscriptions were for. Beside him, Ma Shangxi, who had waited for 2 months, followed. A moment later, in the valley where Jade Snail was placed, Lu Yi and Han Dong sat across from each other, drinking and chatting happily. Lu Yi did not expect to spend so much time at Jade Snail. Fortunately, the results were smooth. With the experience of forging the scabbard, it would be easier to forge it next time with better materials. He prepared to meet Cho Wu tomorrow and ask him about the arrangements at Jade Snail. He had to rush back to the Wanxiang Sea. End of chapter. Chapter 1703. In Han Dong's residence, Lu Yi was drinking and chatting happily with him. After forging the scabbard of the mountain Pandao, Lu Yi was still very happy. Although the quality of this scabbard was not very high, it could temporarily meet his needs. When his cultivation was high in the future, it would not be too late to reforge it again. At that time, it would only be easier. Moreover, Lu Yi had a small idea. The reason why the sword draw was so powerful was because the cultivator's spiritual power had accumulated and nourished the spirit pattern. This thing did not have any rigid requirements for the cultivator's own strength, as long as one was a weapon cultivator. In other words, anyone who had this scabbard could basically use the sword draw ability. Therefore, this thing had the possibility of being popularized. Of course, it was not possible now. Lu Yi had spent 2 months forging this scabbard. How could he have so much time to forge it for others? If there was a chance, perhaps he could try it on a small scale. Among the people close to him, there were still a few weapon cultivators. Not to mention others. The sword cultivator Moon Immortal was quite suitable to have a scabbard containing the sword draw spirit pattern. The killing power of a sword cultivator was originally very strong, and with the instantaneous explosion of the spirit pattern, it would naturally be even stronger. He still had to cultivate the 9 regions' own weapon refiners. If there were enough outstanding weapon refiners in the 9 regions, this idea could be realized. At that time, all the weapon cultivators in the 9 regions would be able to use this method. How terrifying would the explosion of power be? However, this was also difficult. Han Dong's Moon Immortal cultivation was not low, but even if Lu Yi taught him the spirit pattern, he might not be able to forge it in a few years. Lu Yi thought about it briefly, and did not think too much about it for the time being. He continued to drink with Han Dong. Han Dong suddenly took out a sound talisman to check. Someone must have sent him a message. The next moment, he suddenly stood up with a shocked expression. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi saw that his expression was not right and asked. Something unexpected happened. As Han Dong spoke, he was about to walk out, as if he was in a hurry. "Junior brother, go back and rest first. I'll come back to find you later." Lu Yi nodded. "Okay." Unexpectedly, Han Dong stopped and looked back at Lu Yi for a while. He raised his hand and said, "Junior brother, come together." Lu Yi was at a loss. He did not know why Han Dong suddenly changed his mind. From the change in Han Tong's expression, it was clear that this was no small matter. Otherwise, Yu Yao wouldn't be in such a hurry. Lu Yi originally thought that this was a family matter of the Jade Conch world. But Han Dong had invited him along. Something didn't seem right. He didn't feel that this matter had anything to do with him, and he wouldn't make any malicious guesses. Since Han Dong had called for him, he stepped forward and followed. Ma Shangxi followed closely behind. 3 figures soared into the sky. Under Han Dong's lead, they hurriedly rushed towards the outside world. Lu Yi acutely sensed that Han Dong was not the only one who was moving in the Jade Conch world. The few Yu Yaos he had seen before were also moving. Even Realm Lord Chou Wu was flying out. What the hell is going on? Normally speaking, unless it was something that could destroy a realm, a sector lord like Chou Wu wouldn't easily take action. But now even Chou Wu couldn't sit still. This was definitely not a small matter. Lu Yi was puzzled, but he didn't ask. What he should know he would know. What he shouldn't know, there was no need to ask. Before long, the Jade Conch world's Yu Yaos gathered nearby. They were all familiar faces. The Yu Yaos Lu Yi had seen before were all here. Even Wu Zhuo was present. This surprised Lu Yi because he and Han Dong had been refining artifacts for 2 months. He had thought that Wu Zhuo would leave first. Lu Yi looked at Wu Zhuo, seeking his opinion. Wu Zhuo slowly shook his head, a similarly confused expression on his face. What's the situation? Han Dong asked anxiously. Let's talk as we move. Chou Wu called out, immediately summoning a star boat. Everyone boarded, and the star boat transformed into a streak of light that shot into the depths of the cosmos. Lu Yi sensed something and turned to look back. He saw figures flying out of the Jade Conch world on starboats as well. They were the constellations of the Jade Conch world. Not only were the constellations of the inner realm moving in the same direction, but the constellations of the outer realm were also rushing in the same direction. From the looks of it, all the cultivators of the Jade Conch constellation were on the move. Lu Yi immediately realized that this matter was far more serious than he had imagined. The Jade Conch world was already on the verge of war. On the star boat, the Jade Conch world's Yu Yaos listened to Chou Wu's narration, and their expressions gradually turned grave. Lu Yi and Wu Zhuo stood at the side and listened. They slowly understood what was going on. The entire Jade Conch galaxy was located in a very remote location in the cosmos. This remoteness did not mean that the cultivation resources in the galaxy were poor. Judging from the current situation, although the cultivation resources in the galaxy were not abundant, it was actually not too bad. The biggest reason for its remoteness was that it was difficult to communicate with other galaxies. When the 9 states became a large domain, the constellations began to explore the surrounding cosmos. The Jade Conch world had become a large domain many years ago. There were almost 10 Yu Yaos, so naturally, they would explore the surrounding cosmos as well. The range of their exploration was definitely much further than the 9 states. Jade Snail Galaxy was now divided into 3 large realms, extending outwards from the direction of 9 prefectures. Based on the speed of the later stages of Constellation Realm, they would enter an extremely vast and desolate galaxy in 2 years' time. That place was deathly still, and there wasn't even a single realm of the lowest level, much less a cultivation realm. Extending outward from the direction of the Green Dawn Dao world was the Chaotic Explosion Zone. Extending outward from the Jade Conch galaxy was also a desolate domain. However, there were other galaxies in this direction. There was once a Yu Yao in the Jade Conch galaxy who spent 20 years to pass through the desolate domain and reach this galaxy. 20 years was not a short time, even for Yu Yao. With such a long distance, it was difficult for the Jade Conch galaxy to communicate with the other side. Moreover, the Jade Conch galaxy did not have a strong foundation, so they did not dare to make contact with the other side. In the cosmos, there were actually many galaxies like the Jade Conch galaxy. They were either surrounded by the vast desolate domain, or extremely dangerous space wonders. This caused the galaxy to be isolated from the outside world. Under normal circumstances, galaxies like the Jade Conch galaxy would not be too strong, but they would not be too weak either. If they closed their doors and developed on their own, they would not have much of a future. They would not be able to participate in the various top battles in the cosmos, but they would not be in any great danger either. However, unforeseen events happen from time to time. Nearly 3 years ago, the cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy discovered something strange in the direction of the desolate domain. There was suddenly an additional layer of cold air in the cosmos, enveloping a large area. This kind of thing was very rare. So when the news was sent back, Yu Yao of the Jade Conch Galaxy immediately went to the scene to investigate. However, she could not find anything out of the ordinary. The cold air that enveloped a large area had appeared out of nowhere and did not dissipate. However, it did not cause any specific harm. After a long time, the Jade Conch Galaxy stopped paying attention to it. The cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy called that location the cold region, and even marked it on the star map. Soon, the cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy discovered that the cold air in the cold region was not harmful. Instead, it had some benefits. This was because cultivators who possessed the power of the cold element would be able to cultivate much more efficiently in the cold region. Gradually, the cold region became a favorite cultivation place for some cultivators. Many cultivators who cultivated the power of the cold element or secret techniques liked to go there. However, things changed half a year ago. The cold region, which had been quiet for 3 years, had some strange changes. The cold air seemed to have come alive and was constantly vibrating rhythmically. The Jade Conch Galaxy naturally did not dare to be negligent. They immediately sent many people to monitor it. Among them were several Yu Yao. Lu Yi and Wu Zhua had come 2 months ago and discovered that the Jade Conch Galaxy had very few constellations because of this. No one knew whether the cold region was a blessing or a curse. As a precaution, Chou Wu deployed nearly half of the Jade Conch Galaxy's forces there. This way, if anything happened in the cold region, the Jade Conch Galaxy would have enough power to respond. In the end, the unforeseen event really did happen. Half a month ago, the space in the cold region suddenly shattered. Immediately after, a bug path appeared, and a large number of creatures charged out fearlessly. Fortunately, Chou Wu had the foresight to place a large number of people there. Therefore, when the situation became unfavorable, the Yu Yao who were overseeing the area immediately led the constellations to stop them. The bug path's location was fixed. The Jade Conch Galaxy had an absolute geographical advantage. The creatures that charged out of the bug path were not strong, and many of them were killed. However, the enemy's power was very special. It seemed to possess an extremely strange power of pollution. After they died, the power of pollution did not dissipate. It gathered and grew larger, causing the Jade Conch cultivators to be restrained. In addition, there was an endless stream of invaders. It seemed like there was no end to them. It was only a matter of time before the cold region's bug path fell. Therefore, the Yu Yao on the other side made a prompt decision. She ordered someone to send a message to the Jade Conch Galaxy and ask for reinforcements. The message passed through layers and layers. It only took a day to reach the Jade Conch Galaxy from the cold region. When the Jade Conch Galaxy received the message, they did not delay. Almost all of the remaining forces of the entire domain went to provide reinforcements. This was because Chou Wu realized that this was very likely to be a disaster for the Jade Conch Galaxy. If it was not handled well, the entire domain would be destroyed. Lu Yi frowned when he heard this. Just as he was about to ask which race the invaders were from, he suddenly felt his sleeve being tugged. He turned to look and saw Ma Shangxi looking at him. He transmitted his voice with a solemn expression. "My lord, it should be the filth race." Lu Yi was startled and asked, "Are you sure?" "Although I didn't see it with my own eyes. With the cold region's bug path and the power of pollution, it can't be wrong. Other than the filth race, no other race can do such a thing." Lu Yi's expression became serious. If it was the filth race, then things would be troublesome. The filth race. In the starry sky, it was a race that made almost all races tremble in fear. This race had once almost unified the entire starry sky and enslaved all races in the starry sky. Lu Yi knew this because he had read some records in the dwarf race's Rest Abyss Pavilion. However, those records were very vague. Because it was so long ago, even the dwarf race did not know the inside story. However, there was no doubt that the filth race was an extremely powerful and evil race. Lu Yi had never imagined that a remote place like the Jade Conch Galaxy would one day face such a crisis. End of chapter. Chapter 1704. There were all kinds of races in the cosmos, including those without or with low intelligence. There were at least 8,000 of them. Among the myriad races in the cosmos, there were two races that were the most notorious. One was the insect race, and the other was the blood race. The insect race loved to invade realms and devour their resources to develop themselves. Thus, wherever the insect race went, all life would be exterminated. The blood race did not do much worse. Any living being in a realm they targeted would become their blood slaves, their lives at their mercy. Thus, the insect race and the blood race were not in a good situation. They were basically hated by everyone. The blood race had the ability to disguise themselves as humans, so their situation was slightly better. The insect race, on the other hand, could not. Even if they took human form, the insect race's characteristics were extremely obvious and easy to distinguish. In addition to these two major races, there was actually another race that was despised by the myriad races. That was the filth race. However, unlike the insect race and the blood race, not everyone knew about the filth race. This was because they rarely showed themselves, but when they did, they would bring about a devastating disaster. Take the Jade Conch for example. Even now, they had not figured out what the enemy was. The root of all this was the filth race's concealment. The blood race had 5 top-grade realms, each formed by a part of the blood progenitor's body. Although the locations of these realms were not fixed, there were still traces to follow. The insect race was in a similar situation. Several top-grade insect nests were under the surveillance of the starry sky powerhouses and could not be easily moved. If not for the fact that the blood race and the insect race had many powerhouses, which made it difficult for the various races to reach a consensus, the insect race would have long since been annihilated. However, no one knew where the filth race's foundation was. They would often use the insect path to suddenly appear, destroy a star system, and then disappear without a trace, leaving behind only a cruel and chaotic scene. Rumor had it that the filth race's foundation was called the Filth Earth. It was a massive realm, and one of the top-grade realms in the cosmos. However, this was only a rumor, and no one could verify it. Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's voice transmission didn't escape the ears of the Yu Yao and Jade Conch. Han Dong couldn't help but turn to look at them. Junior brother Lu, you are very knowledgeable. Do you know something? Right now, the first thing Yu Conch had to figure out was what race the enemy was, and what they wanted to do. Only then could they come up with a suitable response. If they didn't even know the most basic information, they would definitely be at a disadvantage if they fought. Lu Yi said, I'm not too sure, but Ma Shangxi told me that the ones coming from the insect path should be the filth race. Filthy race? Yu Luo, Yu Yao, and even Wu Zhuo were confused. They had never heard of it before. Lu Yi turned to look at Ma Shangxi. Tell me in detail. Ma Shangxi then told her everything she knew about the filth tribe. Han Dong felt that Lu Yi had been in the myriad phenomenon sea for many years, and was very knowledgeable. However, Ma Shangxi was still the most knowledgeable among all the Yu Yao present. She was the strongest and had lived the longest. She had once disguised herself as a human, and stayed in the myriad phenomenon sea for many years. In terms of knowledge, she was far more knowledgeable than Lu Yi. After hearing about the filth race, Chou Wu's expression turned solemn. How can fellow Taoist Ma determine that the ones coming this time are the filth race? Ma Shangxi said, it's very simple. Their method of invasion is basically the same as what I've heard. They are using a frigid insect path. It is said that the filth race has a starry sky supreme treasure called the Heavenly Frost Mirror. With this treasure, the filth race can release heavenly frost chi at a random location in the starry sky. It should be the frigid realm you saw before. This heavenly frost chi isn't too harmful, and is even useful for the cultivation of some cultivators. However, it has another greatest use, which is to freeze space and then shatter it. artificially creating an insect path that can be used to travel back and forth. A starry sky supreme treasure. The heavenly frost mirror. Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao were shocked. Even though they were born in a remote area, they had heard of starry sky supreme treasures. These were treasures that were born when the starry sky was born. There were only a few of them in the entire starry sky. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was concerned about something else. Although he didn't have a starry sky supreme treasure, he had come into contact with a few, so his reaction wasn't as great as Yu Luo's Yu Yao. Random? In other words, the filth race can't determine where the heavenly frost chi will be released? That's what they said. Ma Shangxi nodded. Mother asterisk cur. Wu Zhuo couldn't help but curse. Why are we so unlucky? Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao also felt extremely unlucky. The starry sky was so vast. So how could the heavenly frost chi appear in Yu Luo galaxy? Yu Luo was in a remote area. It wasn't easy for Lu Yi to appear and open up a path to the myriad phenomenon sea. Just as the good days were about to arrive, something like this happened. Chou Wu's expression was solemn. If it's as fellow Taoist Ma said, then isn't the filth race incredibly powerful? Rizhao. There should be quite a few of them, right? Ma Shangxi nodded. The filth race naturally has a lot of experts. Rizhao will definitely be there, and his numbers won't be small. However, Sector Lord doesn't need to worry about Rizhao attacking. From what I know, the Heavenly Frost Mirror's insect path is different from the real insect path. It has a certain tolerance limit, so Rizhao can't directly attack through the insect path. Han Dong muttered. The insect path is like a water pipe. Rizhao is bigger than the water pipe, so he can't pass through? If he forced his way through, he might burst the water pipe? Something like that. Ma Shangxi nodded. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, slightly relieved. Because with the Jade Conch Eye's power, if Rizhao really attacked, there was no need for them to resist. All they had to do was wash their necks and reach out. Even so, the situation wasn't optimistic. Even if Rizhao couldn't pass through, Yu Yao definitely could. Moreover, the filth race was such a large race. Even if there weren't many Yu Yao, as long as 30 to 50 of them came, the Jade Conch Galaxy wouldn't be able to stop them. As if seeing everyone's worry, Ma Shangxi said, the situation shouldn't be that pessimistic. The filth race is a race that conquers everywhere. So the Jade Conch Galaxy is definitely not the only battlefield they open with the help of the Heavenly Frost Mirror. Hearing this, Lu Ye's eyes lit up. In other words, even if the other party is really from the filth race, we only need to face a small portion of the filth race's power? That's right. Now that the insect path has been opened, there's only one way to protect the galaxy. Kill all the enemies and make the filth race retreat, Ma Shangxi said. Although that was what he said, Ma Shangxi knew that it was too difficult to do this with the Jade Conch Eye's power. He secretly made up his mind that if the situation was bad, he would take the Lord away from here. He couldn't let the Lord die here. Next, Ma Shangxi shared some information he knew about the filth race. The more they knew about the filth race, the more they realized how difficult the situation would be. During the journey, there was a steady stream of news from the cold region. The situation was not optimistic. It had only been a few days, but the cold region was about to fall. It was not that the Jade Conch cultivators were not fighting hard enough. Although they did not know the details of the filth race, they could see that if the cold region could not be defended, the Jade Conch cultivators would be destroyed soon. Therefore, they were almost doing their best. However, the enemies were not afraid of death, and the filth power in their bodies would dissipate after death. Now that the cold region was filled with the filth power, there was only one insect path for the enemies to pass through. As long as the Jade Conch cultivators guarded the exit of the insect path, they would have the geographical advantage. However, the situation was reversed now. If the Jade Conch cultivators wanted to kill the enemies, they had to risk being eroded by the filth power. The current situation was that the Jade Conch cultivators could not kill the enemies, but they could not kill them either. They were tied up. This was the most difficult thing about the filth race. They did not care about death, because the people who died were not their own cultivators. Moreover, the initial death was just to pave the way for the final conquest. Based on the news from the cold region, the enemies killed by the Jade Conch cultivators were not the filth race at all, but the cultivators of various races enslaved by the filth race. The filth race hid in the shadows all year round and launched wars with the help of the heavenly frost mirror. Countless galaxies were destroyed. Not all the living beings in those galaxies were killed. Many of them were infected by the filth power and became slaves for the filth race to launch new wars. Therefore, there was only one thing the Jade Conch cultivators could do now, and that was to do their best to dispel or purify the filth power in the cold region. The effect was not great, because those who had this kind of power were basically medical cultivators, and medical cultivators were the least in number among the various sections. The starboat Lu Yi was on was already rushing toward the cold region at its fastest speed, but even so, it would still take a few days to arrive. 2 days later, new news came from the battlefield. After the filth race had gathered a certain number of people in the cold region, no new enemies appeared. Instead, they were setting up something. As time passed, the Jade Conch cultivators felt that the insect path in the cold region was stabilizing. The insect path was created by the heavenly frost mirror's cold energy freezing and shattering space. It was not the same as a normal insect path, so it was not stable at first, and its size was limited. This was also the reason why Rizhao could not directly kill his way over. If he forced his way through, there was a risk that the insect path would collapse. Once the insect path collapsed, the living beings who passed through would not have a good ending. But now, with the filth race's various arrangements, the insect path was stabilizing. This was a very bad sign, because if the insect path was stable enough, would Rizhao of the filth race be able to kill his way over? If that was the case, the Jade Conch cultivators would be completely finished. When the news came, everyone turned to look at Ma Shangxi, who shook her head and said, "That's all I know about the filth race. I don't know anything else, but according to the information we received, everything the enemy is doing is very likely to lure Rizhao over." The group of Yu Yao felt their scalps go numb. Chou Wu could not help but urge, "Faster, faster." End of this chapter. Chapter 1705. The two Jade Conches and Yu Yaos in charge of steering the starship madly circulated their magic power. But even so, the starship's speed had already reached its limit. Chou Wu had no choice but to send a message to the Jade Conches cultivators, ordering them to stop the filth tribe at all costs. They couldn't let the filth tribe set up their trap. He knew that once the filth tribe succeeded and Rizhao showed up, the Jade Conches would never be able to make a comeback. Although the current situation was dire, the Jade Conches could at least fight. However, the feedback they received made Chou Wu despair. Although Rizhao hadn't shown up on the filth tribe's side, more than a dozen Yu Yaos had already appeared. Coupled with the fact that the frigid zone was filled with the power of filth, the Jade Conches cultivators couldn't do anything. If they forced their way in, they might even die. Faced with such a situation, the Jade Conches cultivators could only watch helplessly. The next day, the frigid zone came into sight. On the starship, Lu Yi looked ahead and saw a vast expanse of gray fog shrouding the starry sky. That should be the original location of the frigid zone. Lu Yi had never seen such a thing before. Even looking at it from afar, the gray fog gave off an extremely foul feeling, as if it was formed from the filth of the world. It made people involuntarily feel disgusted and disgusted. Under the cover of the power of filth, the situation inside couldn't be seen clearly. However, they could still vaguely see many figures moving about. Lu Yi also sensed the aura of the insect path from the center of the gray fog. When they arrived, the Yu Yaos who were originally stationed here came forward to greet them. Their cultivation bases varied. There were early to late-stage Yu Yaos, but without exception, their faces were ashen and their auras were weak. On the surface, they didn't seem injured, but they looked like they had consumed too many spirit pills, causing pill toxins to accumulate in their bodies and impeding the flow of their power. The Yu Yaos naturally wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Therefore, it wasn't pill toxins that were affecting the flow of their magic power, but the strange power of filth. When they met, Chou Wu asked anxiously, "What's the situation now?" The middle-aged man who was the leader wiped his face. They didn't take the initiative to attack. They've been guarding the insect path all this while. I don't know what they're doing, but we've failed to break in. Instead, we've lost some people. The insect path is stabilizing. If what you said is true, then once the insect path stabilizes completely, Rizhao will definitely arrive. How strong are they? Chou asked again. The middle-aged man said, they're not particularly strong, but they're not weak either. They're at a normal level. If it's one-on-one, I'm not afraid of them. But in that environment filled with filthy energy, it's hard for us to perform. Another pale-faced woman nodded and said, that's right. Once you enter that place, not only do you have to fight with the enemy, you also have to constantly circulate your magic power to resist the corrosion of the power of filth. If you're not careful, your magic power will be polluted, and it will be very troublesome to disperse it. Under normal circumstances, even if some pill toxins had accumulated in Yu Yao's body, it wouldn't be troublesome to deal with them. However, the filthy energy that invaded their bodies was different from pill toxins. It was much more difficult to deal with and expel. Looking at the current situation, the Yu Yao of the filth race had the advantage in numbers and the geographical advantage, but they were clearly well versed in the art of conquest. Even though they had the advantage, they didn't take the initiative to attack, only guarding the insect path and busily making arrangements. They clearly wanted Rizhao to come and settle the situation with a single battle. We can't let them continue. Chou shook his head, his eyes filled with determination. Under such circumstances, Yukong was at her wit's end and could only fight. Otherwise, the longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for Yukong. While the Yu Yao were talking, Lu Yi was looking at the original location of the frigid domain. Using his perception, he could sense a dozen or so Yu Yao's auras inside. On the other hand, there were also a dozen or so people on their side, but in terms of numbers, they were slightly inferior to the enemy. Junior brother Lu, Hall Master Wu, I'll need your help in this battle. Chou Wu turned to look at Lu Yi and Wu Zhua. Wu Zhua immediately said, no problem. Since we're here, I won't just stand by and watch. Lu Yi nodded and said, just give us the order, Realm Lord. Both he and Wu Zhua understood that if the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold. Although the evil here was close to the Yukong domain, if Yukong was defeated, the 9 states in Qingli Dao world would not have a good ending. Protecting the Yukong domain was protecting the 9 states and Qingli Dao world. After receiving the two's response, Chou Wu calmed down. Lu Yi was in the early stage of the Yu Yao, so he didn't have much hope. However, Wu Zhuo was in the middle stage and could be of great help. Moreover, Lu Ye's servant Ma Shangxi was in the peak stage of the Yu Yao. They would definitely be of great help. Chou Wu was only glad that Lu Yi and Wu Zhuo had remained in the Yukong domain. Otherwise, with the Yukong domain's strength alone, there might not be any hope. There were still many Yukong constellations rushing over, but they would not make it in time. Chou Wu didn't hesitate and immediately started to deploy. In fact, there wasn't much to deploy. The strength of both sides was obvious. What he needed to do now was to quickly get rid of the enemy's Yu Yao, then find a way to destroy the enemy's arrangements and stop the enemy's sunlight from descending. Just as Ma Shangxi had said before, if they wanted to protect the Yukong domain, they had to get rid of the filth race in front of them and make them retreat. It would be best if they could make them voluntarily close the insect path. Otherwise, if the insect path was here, it would be like having a fierce tiger under their bed. The star system's future would not be stable. The number of Yu Yao was about the same, so they had to target them separately. Under Chou Wu's arrangements, each of the enemies Yu Yao was targeted. However, although the number of Yu Yao was about the same, the enemy's number was greater. Therefore, they had to fight with numbers. The situation wasn't optimistic, but since things had come to this, they could only brace themselves. No matter who it was, no one was optimistic about the outcome of this battle. Lu Yi looked at the middle-aged man who had spoken before and suddenly said, "Senior brother, may I ask how much strength you can use now?" The middle-aged man sighed, 80 to 90%. Lu Yi nodded. "Senior brother, don't move. Let me see if I can dispel the filthy power." Saying so, he raised his hand and patted the middle-aged man's shoulder. The middle-aged man was startled. Junior brother Lu, you're also a medical cultivator? It wasn't that the filthy power couldn't be dispelled or purified. It was just very troublesome. Moreover, those who had such means were usually medical cultivators. Lu Yi looked like a weapon cultivator at first glance, so the middle-aged man couldn't help but be a little puzzled. You can say that. Lu Yi didn't explain too much. Saying so, he urged his spiritual power and the power of the talent tree. As his spiritual power circulated, it began to flow through the middle-aged man's body. The next moment, the middle-aged man's expression froze, revealing a look of disbelief. This was because he felt that as Lu Ye's spiritual power circulated, the filthy power in his body was rapidly dissolving. The situation was like a snowflake exposed to the scorching sun. He was well aware of how tenacious the impure energy was. Based on his own abilities, he could easily expel it in half a year of seclusion. However, the method Lu Yi was using had the miraculous effect of curing the disease. It was truly shocking. Lu Yi wasn't surprised by the middle-aged man's reaction. The talent tree could burn away the curse power that was deeply embedded in the merpeople's bloodline. No matter how difficult this filthy power was to deal with, it couldn't be more powerful than the merpeople's curse. How could the talent tree remain after being burned away? Back then, when Lu Yi helped the merpeople burn away the curse power, he had to be very careful because the curse was a bloodline inheritance. To completely burn it away required a lot of effort, and it also caused considerable damage to the merpeople's physical bodies. But now it wasn't so troublesome. The flow of spiritual power did cause some damage to the middle-aged man's physical body, but with his Yu Yao foundation, he could recover in the blink of an eye. At most he would feel some burning pain. Compared to the power to burn away the filthy power, this little bit of pain was nothing. After a short while Lu Yi withdrew his hand. The middle-aged man stared at Lu Yi in a daze, not knowing what to say. After a long while he finally said, "Junior brother's method is simply amazing." Cho Wu's eyes lit up. "You've dealt with the filthy power?" "It's done." The middle-aged man nodded. He sensed the condition of his body. There's nothing left. The other Yu Yao who had been corroded by the filthy power also looked at Lu Yi with bright eyes. A great battle was imminent. Even the slightest bit of power could be the key to their survival. "Junior brother Lu, please lend us a hand. We can't thank you enough," someone immediately said. Since Lu Yi had taken action, he naturally wouldn't just save one of them. He immediately helped them burn away the filthy power one by one. Without the filthy power, the Yu Yao felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Cho Wu thought for a moment before saying, "Junior brother Lu, it's best if you don't participate in this battle." Since Lu Yi could so easily deal with the filthy power, he was far more important than participating in this battle. Moreover, he was only an early Yu Yao. If he participated in this battle, he would undoubtedly be in more danger than the others. Cho Wu was afraid that something would happen to him. Lu Yi said, "It's all right. We have fewer people than the other side to begin with. Without me, the pressure on the others will increase. I'll just be careful." Cho Wu thought for a moment, and felt that Lu Yi was right. He warned, "You must be careful. If anything goes wrong, immediately flee the battlefield. Your life is your top priority." Lu Yi nodded. "Let's do it," Cho Wu said softly as he looked at the area shrouded in gray fog. In the next instant, as orders were passed down, the Jade Conch constellations began to move, including 2 battleships. The Jade Conch constellations were now divided into 2 groups. One of them had been here for a long time, and had fought several battles with the Yu Yao. The other group was still on their way here, and would probably take another 10 days to half a month to reach the battlefield. These 2 battleships had been driven here by the Jade Conch constellations, and were stationed here. The battle now began with the rumbling of the 2 battleships. Chapter 1706. The warships buzzed as violent attacks rained down on the area where the gray fog was. In an instant, many auras were annihilated. Although the Filth tribe was not afraid of death, and had even used a large number of deaths to gain the geographical advantage, things were different now. Now that the filth tribe was busy stabilizing the insect path, they naturally did not want to be disturbed by the Jade Conch tribe. The gray fog immediately counterattacked. The cultivators under the Yu Yao from both sides fought in the air. This kind of battle was extremely advantageous for the Jade Conch cultivators because they could fight while fleeing. However, it was very disadvantageous for the filth tribe. Although the area covered by the gray fog was not small, there was still a limit. The space for them to move was limited. This restriction caused the filth tribe's casualties to soar. In just a short incense stick's worth of time since the battle began, there were nearly 1,000 auras in the gray fog. Even so, the filth tribe's Yu Yao did not move. They did not seem to care about the deaths of their own cultivators, and were still busy making arrangements. As a large number of filth tribe's death and filth force spread, the gray fog seemed to expand. This was the fundamental reason why the Jade Conch tribe's cultivators were able to take down the insect path despite having the geographical advantage. The more filth tribe they killed, the larger the area covered by the gray fog, and the denser the filth tribe's power became. As they fought, the Jade Conch tribe's cultivators were forced to retreat. "It's about time." Cho Wu watched quietly and said softly. The filth tribe had not sent any reinforcements because there was no movement at the insect path. However, it did not mean that the filth tribe would never send reinforcements if the situation continued like this. With the insect path here, it was very easy for the filth tribe to send reinforcements. Therefore, from the beginning, Cho Wu did not plan to use this method to determine the outcome. The battle between the Yu Yao was the key. As long as they could win on the Yu Yao's level and kill all the Yu Yao, the rest could be slaughtered. Attack! With Cho Wu's order, the Yu Yao on his side moved together and charged toward the area covered by the gray fog. Everyone had their own goal. This was all arranged in advance. If this were in the past, the Yu Yao of Jade Conch might have had their hands tied because they had experienced firsthand how difficult it was to deal with the foul energy. However, now that Lu Yi had used a technique that could swiftly disperse the foul energy, they no longer had any worries. Furthermore, they knew that if they lost this battle, only destruction would await Jade Conch City. As such, the Yu Yao of Jade Conch City didn't hold back at all. They frantically circulated their magic power and locked onto their targets with boundless killing intent. Cho Wu arranged for Lu Yi to be at the early moon jade stage, which was undoubtedly based on his cultivation. At that time, Lu Yi did not express any opinions. So what if it was the early moon jade stage? It was a good opportunity to see what the filthy race was like. "My lord, you must be careful." Ma Shangxi's voice sounded beside his ear. Compared to Yu Conch, he was undoubtedly more concerned about Lu Ye's safety. Lu Yi nodded and charged into the gray fog. He sensed it carefully, and quickly realized that the foul energy within the gray mist was somewhat similar to the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was extremely corrosive, but its corrosive strength was far inferior to the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the 10,000 Elephant Sea, even the Sun Radiant Realm cultivators couldn't resist the corrosion of the sea water. Although the foul energy within the gray mist was very corrosive, it wasn't to that extent. At the very least, Lu Yi could sense that if he circulated his magic power to protect himself, he could resist it. The only price he would have to pay was that his magic power consumption would be higher than usual. If he could resist it here, then the other Yu Yao should be able to do the same. In other words, if there were no external disturbances, then a Yu Yao with sufficient magic power wouldn't be corroded by the foul energy, even if she stayed here for a long time. However, if a battle broke out, then it would be impossible. During a great battle, a cultivator's protective magic power could not be maintained at all times. During a fierce battle, if there was even the slightest obstruction in the flow of magic power, then the foul energy would immediately invade their bodies. The Yu Yao of Jade Conch City had most likely encountered such a situation. Thus, when fighting against the filthy race in this kind of environment, no race would be able to gain an advantage. This was because they would have to divert a portion of their magic power to protect themselves. Lu Yi only needed to use his senses for a moment to discern the various characteristics of the gray mist. The auras of many living beings in front of him approached him, their cultivation levels uneven. Most of them were star mansions, and Lu Yi even sensed the auras of divine ocean cultivators. Under normal circumstances, divine ocean cultivators couldn't leave the realm and traverse the starry sky with their physical bodies. This was because if their physique wasn't up to par, they wouldn't be able to resist the omnipresent starry sky energy. Only star mansions had the qualifications to do so. However, there were exceptions to everything. On the insect race's side, not to mention divine ocean cultivators, even true lake insect race cultivators had the ability to move through the starry sky. They relied on the special carapace specially bred by their hives. This special carapace could resist the starry sky energy and prevent the insect race from dying. On the blood race's side, there was the blood sea. Cultivators with higher cultivation levels could bring cultivators with lower cultivation levels across the starry sky. The situation on the filthy race's side was clear at a glance. The foul energy in the gray mist had undoubtedly created a suitable space for these divine ocean filthy race cultivators to move about. Within this area, there was no starry sky energy at all, so the divine ocean filthy race cultivators were naturally unaffected. However, whether it was divine ocean cultivators or star mansions, they were nothing in front of the current Lu Yi. He didn't even have the desire to draw his saber. He raised his hand and launched a series of fire-type spell techniques. He hadn't done this for a long time. With the talent tree, his attainments in the Tao of spell techniques were not low. Flames soared into the sky and illuminated the starry sky. Lu Ye's figure did not stop as he slaughtered his way out. In front of him, Yu Yao of the filthy race, who had been locked onto by his divine sense, roared and brazenly charged forward. Her magic power fluctuated wildly, and her aura was extremely ferocious. It was only then that Lu Yi realized what kind of person his opponent was. It was actually a star beast. He had learned a lot about the filthy race from Ma Shangxi, so Lu Yi could tell at a glance that his opponent was not a filthy race cultivator, but a slave enslaved by the filthy race. The filthy race was different from other races. It was a race, but it was actually a general term. This was because this race was all-inclusive. Any living being of any race could become a filthy race. The only condition was that they could maintain their own consciousness after being infected by the foul energy. The foul energy was extremely invasive. Most living beings would lose their rationality after being infected, leaving only their instincts. These living beings were slaves to the filthy race. However, there were also a small number of living beings who could maintain their rationality. Such living beings, no matter what race they were before, would become a filthy race cultivator. The star beast in front of Lu Yi was obviously just a slave. Sensing Lu Ye's malice, it charged forward without restraint. Lu Yi had expected this. There must be a real filthy race cultivator among the dozen or so Yu Yao here. Otherwise, a group of mindless slaves would not be able to do anything. It was just that before the battle began, no one could tell which was a real filthy race cultivator and which was a slave. When it got closer, Lu Yi could see what the star beast looked like. It was a rotten meatball with green water all over its body. It reminded Lu Yi of the corpse race. That was what the corpse race looked like. The rotten meatball-like star beast was the size of a house. Its limbs were extremely short, and its claws were almost negligible. Only its 2 legs were thick and sturdy, and its head was pitifully small. Its entire body was extremely disproportionate. Lu Yi had never seen such a star beast before. However, there were many types of star beasts, so Lu Yi was not surprised. There was nothing to say. He directly blasted out a violent spell technique. In an instant, flames soared into the sky and enveloped the star beast. With a furious roar, the star beast's huge body was forced back again and again. It could not even get close to Lu Yi. Although Lu Yi was a weapon cultivator, his magic power was extremely pure. The power of his spell techniques could not be underestimated. He was confident that he could easily deal with such an enemy. The continuous collision of spells caused the star beast's body to begin to break apart. Green juice splattered everywhere. Just as Lu Yi was about to take it down in one go, the star beast roared again from within the flames. Immediately after, hundreds of green lights suddenly bloomed. The green lights were dazzling, and Lu Ye's vision was instantly filled with green. At the same time, he felt his spirit sea being attacked. However, soon after, 7-colored multicolored light blossomed. After receiving the impact, the divine sea that was surging with waves calmed down. When Lu Yi looked again, he could clearly see what the green lights that had attacked his spirit sea were. They were actually emerald eyes. There were hundreds of them on the star beast's round body. At this moment, they were all open and constantly emitting green light. It was an extremely strange sight. This was clearly the star beast's method. Moreover, it had the effect of attacking the spirit. If it were not for the rainbow divine lotus, Lu Yi might have suffered a small loss. Of course, it was impossible for the star beast to use this method to kill him. Although Lu Yi had just become a Yu Yao, the toughness of his spirit was incomparable to that of an ordinary Yu Yao. The star beast could not get close to Lu Yi. The divine might released by the hundreds of eyes was also ineffective. If it were a normal star beast, it would have definitely turned around and fled. However, this star beast had long since lost its consciousness. It was only under the control of the filth tribe. It had no intention of fleeing at all. It continued to charge toward Lu Yi. Another fire dragon roared and rushed out. It tore through the star beast's chest and burrowed into its flesh. Then it exploded. Immediately after, numerous spell techniques were unleashed. After 3 breaths, the star beast's rotting body completely disintegrated. Yu Yao had died. Yu Yao was slightly startled by the commotion. Everyone hurriedly released their divine sense to investigate the situation. They were all on edge, afraid that they would discover something unfavorable to their side. However, to their surprise, Lu Ye's battle had already ended. How long had it been? They had only just charged over and clashed with their enemy. Yet, Lu Yi had already dealt with his opponent? Wasn't this speed a little too fast? End of chapter 1. Chapter 1707. Within the gray mist, Ma Shangxi had already clashed with his enemies. He was under immense pressure, so he didn't have the time to investigate the situation elsewhere. The main reason he was under so much pressure was that he had to deal with 2 enemies, and both of them were late-stage Yu Yao beings. This couldn't be helped. They had fewer Yu Yao beings on their side than their enemies. As one of the 2 most powerful Yu Yao beings on their side, he naturally had to contribute more. This was Chou Wu's arrangement. Although there was pressure, it wasn't a big problem. Ma Shangxi had unleashed his sea of blood from the get-go, enveloping his 2 enemies within. Blood tribe cultivators often used their seas of blood to create an advantageous environment for themselves. This was the most commonly used method. Not only were the 2 late-stage Yu Yao beings enveloped by his sea of blood, but many of the star mansions and divine seas in the surrounding area were also enveloped. If this were any other place, Ma Shangxi was confident that he would be able to exterminate all of his enemies within his sea of blood. However, the environment here wasn't normal. Within the sea of blood's range, the rich power of turbidity was corroding even the sea of blood. Ma Shangxi immediately felt that something was amiss. He secretly estimated that he could at most hold on for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Once the time limit was exceeded, he might not even be able to keep his blood sea. When that time came, his vitality would be greatly damaged. Hence, he couldn't wait to kill one of the late-stage Yu Yao beings. However, even though he was already at the peak of the Yu Yao realm, he was still a late-stage Yu Yao being. How could it be so easy to quickly kill an enemy of the same cultivation level? Just as he was contemplating what to do, he suddenly sensed that someone had barged into his sea of blood. Ma Shangxi instinctively sensed this, and he hurriedly transmitted his voice. "Holy Venerable One?" It was Lu Yi, who had immediately rushed in after dealing with his opponent. Lu Yi knew his side's arrangements, so he naturally understood the pressure Ma Shangxi was under. Hence, he immediately came to provide assistance. "You lead the way, I'll kill the enemies," Lu Yi instructed. Ma Shangxi hurriedly complied. He activated the might of his sea of blood and split into 2 late-stage Yu Yao beings while guiding Lu Yi. 2 breaths later, Lu Yi had already arrived at a certain location within the sea of blood. He could clearly sense the aura of a late-stage Yu Yao being in front of him. He could even make out the rough outline of the other party. It looked like a human, but it was unclear what race it originally belonged to. However, judging from its violent aura, it was most likely another filth that had been transformed and had lost its own rationality. Staring at the blurry silhouette, Lu Yi rushed forward and pressed his hand on the hilt of the mountain pan saber. As if sensing Lu Ye's hidden killing intent, the figure suddenly turned around. His magic power surged violently as he pounced towards Lu Yi. The pan mountain saber was unsheathed at this moment. A faint radiance blossomed, and soon after, the wheel spun like a moon, slashing through the waves. A huge gap was slashed open in the sea of blood that was so thick that it was almost solid. The saber light swept into the depths and slashed out for a distance of 10 miles before the violent might slowly dissipated. Ma Shangxi, who had been paying close attention to the situation on Lu Ye's side and was ready to help at any time, opened his mouth wide as if he had seen something inconceivable. It wasn't until Yu Yao's late-stage aura suddenly vanished that Ma Shangxi snapped back to reality. Even he found it difficult to deal with an enemy who was at the late stage of Moon Jade Realm. However, the Holy Venerate had killed him with a single slash. Was the Holy Venerate this strong? Because Lu Yi had unleashed his power in Ma Shangxi's sea of blood, Ma Shangxi had clearly sensed the terror of that slash. It was not a slash that an early-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator could produce. If he had been in Lu Ye's shoes, even if he did not die, he would not have had a good ending. Ma Shangxi was at a loss. Let's kill him together. Lu Ye's voice rang out in his ears. Only then did Ma Shangxi snap out of his daze and rush toward the other late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator with Lu Yi. At the same time, Lu Ye's saber-wielding right arm trembled slightly, as if he had lost all his strength. This was a feeling that he had not felt in a long time. Ever since he had passed Wang Xiu's test on the way back to the 9 states and obtained the saber draw inheritance, he had been maintaining the spirit pattern on the Mountain Pan Mountain Saber. The nourishment of the saber draw spirit pattern had long reached its limit. Even when he had been forging the scabbard with Han Dong, Lu Yi had not given up on maintaining the spirit pattern. This was because it was his strongest trump card at the moment, and he could use it at any time. And now, it really did come in handy. This was the first time Lu Yi had used the saber draw, and the power of this thing was greater than he had expected. It could be said that this kind of attack was not something he should have been able to execute with his current cultivation. This caused his body to bear a huge burden, and he could not even control the attack perfectly. When dealing with the early-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator, Lu Yi did not even bring out the Mountain Pan Mountain Saber. He was determined to leave the first strike to the late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator. The plan was proceeding smoothly. The early-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator was blasted to death by his spell technique, and the late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator was killed by his saber. It did not even have a chance to react. There was only one late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator left in the Sea of Blood. Even if Lu Yi did not interfere, Ma Shangxi still had the ability to deal with it. However, the environment of this battlefield was unfavorable to the cultivators on their side, so they had to end the battle quickly. The late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator was already a little dizzy from being trapped in the Sea of Blood. It did not know what was going on. When Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi joined forces to surround it, it immediately fell into a sorry state. Ma Shangxi also knew that he could not delay, so he did not hold back at all. He was a peak-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator. It could be said that he was a combination of magic and body cultivator. Under his frenzied attacks, the enemy in the Sea of Blood could only defend, unable to retaliate at all. Lu Yi swam around from the side, waiting for an opportunity to strike with his saber. Before the enemy could retaliate, he had already fled far away. When the enemy's attention was focused on Ma Shangxi again, he ran over and slashed with his saber. In less than 10 breaths of time, the late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator had been slashed several times. Each wound was so deep that bone could be seen. The Mountain Pan Mountain Saber had been upgraded to a Dharma treasure after Lu Ye's cultivation base had been substituted, and its sharpness had risen to a whole new level. Now that it was supplemented by Lu Ye's divine edge spirit marks, it could be said that under the premise of being at the same cultivation base, there was basically no physical body that could block the Mountain Pan Mountain Saber's attacks. The only exception was a defensive Dharma treasure. However, after being upgraded to a Dharma treasure, the Mountain Pan Mountain Saber had gained an additional characteristic. Its destructive power against defensive Dharma treasures was especially strong. Therefore, even if the enemy really did bring out a defensive Dharma treasure, it would not be able to change the situation. At most, it would only be able to buy some time. The late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivator's physique was very strong. Under normal circumstances, even if she was injured by Lu Yi, she would be able to quickly recover. However, the strange power of the Dharma treasure entwined around the wounds, preventing them from healing. Thus, even though the enemy was intentionally controlling the large wounds, so that not too much blood flowed out, they were unable to heal. Ma Shangxi blood tracing art. Lu Yi growled. With a wave of his saber, a strange power spread out in all directions. The invisible Dharma power entwining around the enemy's wounds was immediately affected. In an instant, the already large wounds were torn open and widened. At the same time, Ma Shangxi also activated the blood tracing art. The blood tracing art was a low-level spell technique of the blood race. Under normal circumstances, a true Lake Realm cultivator would be qualified to cultivate it. The blood tracing art's function was very simple: to draw the blood from the enemy's wounds and hasten the loss of blood. Therefore, it was best not to get injured when fighting against a blood race cultivator. Even if you were injured, you had to recover as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if the wounds were exposed, the blood tracing art would be used by the blood tracing art. This was especially true in a unique environment like the Blood Sea. When Ma Shangxi, a peak moon jade, activated the blood tracing art, its power would be infinitely amplified. The moment the large wounds on the enemy's body were torn open, Ma Shangxi activated the blood tracing art. In an instant, the few wounds that were originally not bleeding much suddenly gushed out like pillars of blood. In this area, the sea of blood, which was already thick to begin with, became even thicker. Ma Shangxi activated the blood tracing art madly. She couldn't help but lick the corners of her mouth, as if she had just tasted something delicious. The blood essence of a late-stage moon jade was indeed food for a blood race cultivator like Ma Shangxi. After the blood gushed out, it merged into the blood sea. Ma Shangxi could find an opportunity to refine it later, and use it to strengthen her own blood sea. The late-stage moon jade roared at the sky as if she had sensed that her death was imminent. With a thought, she locked onto Lu Ye's position and charged toward him. As she moved, her body rapidly shriveled up. This was a sign that she had lost too much blood essence. The loss of blood essence wasn't the only thing that affected her. It also affected the foundation of a cultivator. Thus, the late-stage moon jade's aura was weakening at a rate visible to the naked eye. Lu Yi didn't dodge at all. He raised his saber and charged forward. Before the enemy could even react, he had already arrived behind her with Ma Shangxi's help. When he slashed out with his saber, the faint sound of bestial roars could be heard. She bared her fangs and lunged forward. In the next instant, another late-stage moon jade's aura died. At this moment, the moon jades of Jade Conch Mountain were filled with shock. The destruction of a late-stage moon jade's aura was too loud. Even with the concealment of Ma Shangxi's blood sea, it couldn't hide it. Chou Wu and the others had already sensed it when Lu Yi killed the first late-stage moon jade. Aside from their joy, they were also shocked. This was because the speed of this battle was too fast. They all knew that Ma Shangxi and the moon jade were at the peak of their cultivation bases. But even so, they shouldn't have been able to defeat two late-stage moon jades so quickly. The fact that Lu Yi had been able to defeat a late-stage moon jade so quickly was already shocking enough. However, compared to Ma Shangxi's battle record, this was nothing. That's right. The moon jades of Jade Conch Mountain all thought that this was Ma Shangxi's doing. This was a normal reaction. Chou Wu was excited. Lu Yi and her master had given him two huge surprises when they started fighting. He suddenly felt that this battle wasn't as difficult as he had imagined. End of chapter. Chapter 1708. Originally, Chou Wu had planned on opening a gap on his side first, then going to help the others. That way, they could slowly nibble away at the enemies one by one. This was the Jade Conch Galaxy, and as the realm lord of the Jade Conch Galaxy, he had a responsibility. Even if he had to suffer serious injuries or even die in battle, he had to stop the enemy's plan. Thus, before the battle began, he had already planned on sacrificing himself for a noble cause. However, before he could do anything, Ma Shangxi had already succeeded. In just a few dozen breaths, he'd killed 2 late-stage Moon Yao cultivators. Chou Wu hurriedly transmitted his voice. Everyone, stay calm and wait for fellow Taoist Ma's help. The gap had already been opened, so there was no need to be impatient. Although he was old, if he could live, who would be willing to die? As soon as he finished speaking, Ma Shangxi's sea of blood began to move, enveloping another part of the battlefield. Both sides fighting on this battlefield were late-stage Moon Yao cultivators. This was also Ma Shangxi's deliberate choice. If he wanted to quickly deal with the enemy, he naturally had to focus on the stronger ones. As long as he killed a few of the stronger ones, the remaining ones wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Seeing the sea of blood move over, the late-stage Moon Yao cultivator of the Filth tribe clearly wanted to escape. However, the late-stage Moon Yao cultivator of the Jade Conch Galaxy naturally wouldn't allow that to happen. He frantically tried to stop and intercept the enemy. For a time, the Filth tribe cultivator couldn't do anything. He could only watch as the battlefield he was in was enveloped by the sea of blood. Holy Sovereign, this guy has intelligence. Ma Shangxi immediately reported to Lu Yi when he saw the enemy's reaction. Kill him. Lu Yi's expression was calm. If this Moon Yao cultivator had intelligence, then he was a true Filth tribe cultivator, not a lowly servant. As long as he was dealt with, the situation here would be more or less stabilized. Holy Sovereign, I'll create an opportunity for you. Ma Shangxi had a loyal and devoted look on his face, because he discovered that his cooperation with Lu Yi was simply flawless. He didn't know what technique Lu Yi had used to tear open the enemy's wounds, but that technique and his blood-tracing technique were a match made in heaven. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be easy to kill a late-stage Moon Yao cultivator. He'd have to beat them to the point of death. However, he and Lu Yi's cooperation didn't need to go through that much trouble. All they had to do was cut a few wounds and activate the blood-tracing technique. Their enemies in the sea of blood were at their mercy. It could be said that the risk was infinitely reduced. After a short while, another late-stage Moon Jade's aura was annihilated in the blood sea. Ma Shangxi's blood sea teleportation had arrived, and the other party had not been able to escape in time. His fate was already sealed, and there was no doubt about it. After all, Yu Yao alone was enough to cause him a lot of trouble. Now that Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi were working together, unless Ri Zhao personally intervened, Yu Yao wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Ma Shangxi's sea of blood started to move again. Wherever it passed, large swathes of living beings would perish. Soon, it arrived at another battlefield belonging to Yu Yao. If the situation continued to develop like this, it wouldn't be long before the invading enemies would be defeated one by one. However, at this moment, Ma Shangxi suddenly exclaimed, "My lord, there's movement from the insect path. Let me take a look." Lu Yi hurriedly said. Within the blood sea, apart from the caster, anyone else who entered would be affected. This included their 5 senses and divine consciousness. Of course, Lu Yi could also activate the blood sea technique and merge it with Ma Shangxi's blood sea. That way, he wouldn't be affected by this restriction. However, if he really did that, it would disperse his power. Moreover, he had to constantly activate the Holy Convergence technique. Otherwise, Ma Shangxi would be suppressed by the Holy Convergence technique. Therefore, Lu Yi hadn't activated the blood sea technique. Within the blood sea, Ma Shangxi was the absolute leader. Lu Yi wanted to investigate the situation on the insect path, so he needed Ma Shangxi's cooperation. In the next instant, with Ma Shangxi's help, Lu Yi's divine consciousness spread out toward the insect path. Sure enough, there was movement on the insect path. Lu Yi could already sense Yu Yao's aura from it. The enemy has reinforcements. Lu Yi immediately came to this conclusion. It was obvious that the filth tribe on the other side of the insect path had sensed that something was amiss and had sent reinforcements. Moreover, based on the movement, they should be arriving soon. Go over there and block the insect path, Lu Yi immediately ordered. The situation here had been resolved with great difficulty. If the enemy really sent more Yu Yao, then all of their efforts would have been for naught. The filth tribe had a strong foundation. If reinforcements really came, there would definitely be more than just Yu Yao. Ma Shangxi also knew that the situation was urgent. She urged the blood sea and pounced toward the insect path. At the same time, Lu Yi condensed his own precious blood. With a flick of his finger, 5 figures appeared and rushed out of the blood sea. He now had 5 drops of precious blood. This time, he could be said to have used all of his strength. The blood sea's speed was extremely fast, destroying everything in its path. When it rushed to the insect path, a huge figure just happened to appear. This figure was about 100 feet tall. Apart from the unknown beast's skin tied around his waist that covered his vital parts, the rest of his body was exposed. He carried a huge mace on his shoulder, looking awe-inspiring. The aura on his body was also extremely violent. It was at the peak of Yu Yao's strength. The filth tribe had clearly sent an incredible guy over. Lu Yi recognized that this was a member of the giant tribe. Although they were rare in the universe, they were not rare either. They were born with boundless strength and terrifying physiques. They looked clumsy, but in reality, they were extremely difficult to deal with. In the insect path behind the filth tribe giant, Yu Yao's aura was faintly discernible. Clearly, more reinforcements were about to arrive. End this quickly, Lu Yi ordered. Ma Shangxi also knew that he had to fight with all his might. Otherwise, if the enemy's reinforcements really rushed over, the situation here would instantly collapse. He immediately shrunk the blood sea, enveloping the insect path, and the filth tribe giant within it. Although the blood sea had shrunk by more than half, its might became even more violent. The filth tribe giant that walked out of the insect path didn't even see the situation clearly before he was faced with an overwhelming wave of blood arts. He disdainfully raised his head and roared. Mere blood arts dare to offend the might of the filth tribe? Hurry up and submit. Dense magic power surged, blocking all the blood arts outside. At the same time, he waved the huge mace in his hand, stirring the blood sea. In an instant the blood sea surged. At the same time, his own filthy power spread wildly, corroding the surroundings. However, before he could act presumptuously for long, Ma Shangxi's angry roar rang out. What nonsense are you bragging about? With me here, you can talk after you've survived. Although Ma Shangxi was submissive in front of Lu Yi, he was still a peak Yu Yao. Even in the blood tribe, he had a certain status. If the other party was Rizhao, Ma Shangxi definitely wouldn't dare to say anything. However, he was also a Yu Yao, so how could he allow someone to be so arrogant in front of him? As soon as he finished speaking, the blood light on his body condensed and expanded, turning into a figure that was about the same size as the filth tribe giant. At the same time, he borrowed the power of the blood sea to condense a blood-colored staff in his hand. The two huge figures immediately engaged in a fierce battle at the exit of the insect path. Lu Yi used the blood sea as cover and activated concealment at the same time, trying his best to conceal his existence as he searched for an opportunity to attack. On the other side, 3 of the 5 treasured blood clones that he sent out formed a simple tripartite formation and charged toward the nearest battlefield. The other 2 treasured blood clones headed in another direction. It was actually very difficult for cultivators who cultivated to the Yu Yao realm to form a formation. At most, they could only join hands to resist the enemy unless they used the twin chi-linked branches formation disc. However, even though Lu Yi had modified the twin spirit connecting formation disc, it was only suitable for star constellations. It wasn't suitable for Yu Yao. This was because Yu Yao's movements were too large, and the formation disc was a restriction. Ordinary Yu Yao naturally couldn't form a formation, but Lu Ye's treasured blood clones didn't have to worry about this at all. They were clones that originated from the same source, so there was no difference in their chi, dermic powers, chi, and blood. It was simply too easy for them to form a formation. There was only one thing. Although the treasured blood clones could display Lu Ye's full strength, they didn't have the Pan Shan saber in their hands, and they didn't have the talent tree. Therefore, in theory, the methods that the treasured blood clones could use were limited. Moreover, the energy of the treasured blood clones was limited, so they couldn't fight for too long. Otherwise, when their energy was exhausted, the treasured blood clones would dissipate, and Lu Yi would have to spend time to reform them. Even so, when the 3 treasured blood clones formed a formation, they helped Yu Yao gain a huge advantage on the battlefield. The treasured blood clones weren't afraid of death, and under the formation, they bore a lot of pressure. Seeing this, Yu Yao desperately urged her dermic powers and quickly gained the upper hand. In addition to Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's previous efforts, Yu Yao had an absolute advantage on the battlefield. As long as they had enough time, killing the other party wouldn't be a problem. The battle here was in full swing, and the exit of the worm passage was also locked in a fierce battle. Lu Ye's other 2 treasured blood clones had already arrived at a certain location. Without Yu Yao's interference, only a few constellations and spirit seas could stop the 2 treasured blood clones. There was a strange thing standing there. It was shaped like a pagoda with 13 floors. Rich filthy power flowed inside and out. Lu Yi sensed that this thing had some vague connection with the worm passage. There was more than one such thing. There were as many as 8 such things surrounding the worm passage. Earlier, when he rushed here, Yu Yao had said that after the filthy people occupied this area, they had been arranging something. It seemed that they had the intention of stabilizing the worm passage and allowing Rizhao to come here. These tower-shaped things were obviously the arrangement of the filthy people. Lu Yi had planned to study this thing after the end of the battle, but now that the other party had sent reinforcements across the worm passage, he couldn't delay any longer. No matter what this thing was, there was no doubt that it was used to stabilize the worm passage. Therefore, he had to destroy it. Lu Yi keenly discovered a problem. With the arrival of the filthy giant, the worm passage shook a little. End of chapter. Chapter 1709. The filth race conquered everywhere, and came, and went without a trace. They relied on their starry sky supreme treasure, the heavenly frost mirror. This treasure could release heavenly frost chi at a random location in the starry sky to freeze and shatter space, then create a passageway. However, this passageway created by the heavenly frost chi was basically unstable. At most, it could only support the passage of the Yu Jade realm, and there was a certain amount of risk involved. Therefore, the filth race's method of conquering was to first send a portion of Yu Yao to stabilize the situation at the exit of the passageway and occupy the terrain. Then, they would use some methods to stabilize the passageway. Once the passageway was stable enough to allow Rizhao to pass through, the overall situation would be decided. This was also the reason why the filth race had the upper hand in the beginning, but they still hid in the filthy area and didn't chase after them. They didn't know which star system they were in, and whether Rizhao was there or not. To be safe, they naturally had to guard the insect path and set up a method to stabilize it. Lu Yi was actually a little confused because although the filth race had deployed a large number of Yu Yao here, a dozen Yu Yao was definitely not a lot. Even though Ma Shangxi had said that the filth race had opened up more than one battlefield in space, and that they only needed to deal with a small portion of the filth race's forces, the filth race was so large that they could easily send out a few dozen Yu Yaos, let alone a few hundred. It was not until the filth giant arrived that Lu Yi understood the crux of the matter. It was because of the passageway. He keenly sensed that with the arrival of the filth giant, the passageway was clearly shaken. As a result, the passageway's stability was affected and became more chaotic than before. In other words, although the passageway opened up by the heavenly frost mirror could allow Yu Yao to pass through, the passageway's stability would be affected every time a Yu Yao passed through. Therefore, the filth race only sent a dozen Yu Yao at first. It was not that they did not want to send more Yu Yao, but they could not. This was probably a number set based on the foundation of the Jade Conch cultivators. In the filth race's view, the dozen or so Yu Yao who arrived first were enough to protect the passageway with their geographical advantage. As long as they set up a method to stabilize the passageway, they could let Rizhao come through the passageway and Jade Conch would not be able to resist. There was no problem with the Filth Race's plan. If Lu Yi had not coincidentally encountered this battle, with Jade Conch's current foundation, it would indeed be a crisis. But it just so happened that Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi were guests in Yuluo, so they rushed here together. At this moment, Yu Yao of the Filth Race had suffered heavy losses on the battlefield. If they didn't receive any reinforcements soon, then all of their previous preparations and efforts would be for naught. That was why the filthy giant had come. Not only had he come, but the other Yu Yao were also traveling through the worm path. They would most likely arrive soon. After this battle, the filthy race should have understood the situation on Jade Conch's side. They should have seen through the awkwardness of Jade Conch's lack of sunlight. This was because if the Jade Conch star system had sunlight, then it would have already arrived. However, only Yu Yao had participated in the battle so far, which was enough to prove that the Jade Conch star system wasn't a powerful galaxy. This was the best target for the Filth Race, so they immediately sent reinforcements. The two doppelgangers walked in front of the filthy pagoda and raised their hands to destroy it. Although this thing was set up by the Filthy Race, it was not strong, so it was not difficult to destroy. As the filthy pagoda shattered, Lu Yi clearly sensed the insect path trembling again. He immediately realized that he had made the right choice. If these pagodas were destroyed, it would definitely greatly affect the Filth Race's next plan. The two doppelgangers immediately split up and took action. On the other side, at the exit of the insect path, the filthy giant and Ma Shangxi were fighting fiercely. On the surface, it seemed like they were almost evenly matched, but in fact Ma Shangxi was under a lot of pressure. It was not that he was weaker than the other party, but the filthy power was constantly polluting his blood sea and magic power. It was not a problem for him to fight with the other party for a short time, but as time passed, the power he could use would inevitably weaken. On the other hand, the filthy giant was not affected by the filthy power at all. Instead, he was like a fish in water. Fortunately, there was still Lu Yi. The master and servant had worked together to kill a few Yu Yao before. Although this was the first time they had worked together, their cooperation was very skillful. While the filthy giant was entangled by Ma Shangxi, Lu Yi had already activated his technique. His figure floated back and forth like a ghost, and saber lights flashed continuously. The filthy giant roared angrily, and huge wounds appeared on his body one after another. Lu Yi felt more and more how powerful the mountain pan saber was. Although the giant race's physique was not as tough as the stone races, in terms of physique strength alone, it was enough to rank in the top 10 races in the universe. They were born with rough skin and thick flesh, and this time, the one who came from the insect path was a peak Yu Yao. Even if ordinary weapons slashed at him, they might not be able to pose much of a threat. The mountain pan saber could. It was incomparably sharp, and with Lu Ye's divine edge spirit tattoo, as long as the enemy's cultivation was not enough, the mountain pan saber could break through the defenses of the body. Flesh and blood rolled around the wounds, and it looked terrible. However, in reality, such injuries were only superficial wounds for a peak Yu Yao, let alone a peak Yu Yao. However, the filthy giant clearly felt that something was wrong. This was because the wounds that should have been able to heal quickly were healing extremely slowly. Moreover, there seemed to be an extremely strange power lingering around the wounds. It was this power that was preventing the wounds from healing. The filthy giant roared again and again. When he was fighting with Ma Shangxi, he wanted to find a chance to get rid of Lu Yi, because he realized that this jumping human was a problem. However, the leaping technique he inherited from Yen Shi was very ghostly. Lu Yi was basically in a state where he would leave after one slash, and with Ma Shangxi's blood sea covering his tracks, he did not give the filthy giant any chance to attack. After another fierce clash, Ma Shangxi retreated and looked at the filthy giant coldly. Meeting his gaze, the filthy giant's heart skipped a beat as he realized that something was wrong. He had also fought against the blood race before, so he naturally knew how disadvantageous it was for him to face a blood race with his current wounded state. Without any hesitation, the filthy giant pounced at Ma Shangxi. Ma Shangxi sneered and allowed the huge spiked club to smash into his body. His entire body seemed to have been shattered, turning into a mass of blood energy that merged into the blood sea. But in the next moment, the filthy giant's expression changed because the wounds on his body were suddenly torn open by an invisible force and became even larger. The blood that he had deliberately controlled to not flow too much was now gushing out. He knew that this was the blood race's blood tracing technique. Under normal circumstances, this blood art wouldn't be of much use against the cultivators above the constellations. This was because the cultivators above the constellations all had powerful physiques and methods to quickly recover. Without any wounds, the blood guide art wouldn't be able to work. However, the wounds caused by the mountain blade were not so easy to heal. Coupled with the blood tracing technique used by Ma Shangxi, who was at the peak of Yu Yao, even the filthy giant could not resist. Feeling his blood flowing wildly, the filthy giant panicked. He ran back and forth for a while to search for the enemy, but in the end, not only did he not see Ma Shangxi's figure, he also could not find Lu Ye's figure. This was the disgusting part of fighting against the blood race in the blood sea. The blood race could advance and retreat freely in the blood sea. Unless one had an overwhelming advantage, it was very difficult to fight against the blood race. If it was under normal circumstances, the filthy giant could escape from here and look for another opportunity. However, he had rushed over from the insect path, so his greatest responsibility was to guard the exit of the insect path. He was basically nailed to the ground here, so how could he escape? "Get out here!" he roared as his magic power surged. He waved the wolf-tooth club in his hand and stirred up the blood sea. Ma Shangxi did not show up at all, allowing the filthy giant to do as he pleased in the blood sea. It could even be said that this was something he wanted to see, because the more the filthy giant struggled, the more powerful his blood tracing technique would be. Lu Yi also hid somewhere in the blood sea, coldly looking at the filthy giant's sorry figure. Moments later, Ma Shangxi suddenly cried out in alarm. "Not good. Another Yu Yao is coming from the insect path." Moreover, judging from the aura, it was an existence not inferior to the filthy giant. Working together with Lu Yi to deal with the filthy giant, Ma Shangxi did not feel any pressure at all. He had already gained the upper hand. Now, all he needed to do was hide in the blood sea and continuously use the blood tracing technique. Under the guidance of the blood tracing technique, once the filthy giant's blood ran dry, he would die without a doubt. However, if another enemy similar to the filthy giant appeared, Ma Shangxi was not confident. Especially as time passed, he would be affected more and more by the filthy power. Thinking about it, Ma Shangxi made a decision. "Lord, I'll go kill him." In this situation, only by killing the filthy giant would he be able to deal with the next enemy with all his strength. "Don't panic," Lu Yi calmly replied. At this time, it was very dangerous to forcefully kill the filthy giant. The other party had already sensed that something was wrong. It was fine if he and Ma Shangxi hid, but once they showed up, they would definitely be attacked with all their strength. Now that they were facing the filthy giant, the victory was already decided, so there was no need to take unnecessary risks. But Ma Shangxi still had doubts, but he soon understood why Lu Yi was so calm. It was because powerful auras suddenly rushed into the blood sea from all directions, rushing toward the insect path's location. It was the Yu Yao of Jade Conch and Lu Ye's 5 treasured blood clones. Previously, Ma Shangxi had been fighting the filthy giant, and then focused on using the blood tracing technique, so he did not have much awareness of the situation outside. It was only now that he realized that the Yu Yao of Jade Conch had killed all their opponents, and the filthy giant had all been killed. End of chapter. Chapter 1710. Seeing Lu Ye's precious blood clones, Ma Shangxi knew what was going on. He and Lu Yi had already helped Jade Conch gain an overwhelming advantage. So with Lu Ye's 5 precious blood clones joining the battle formation, how could the remaining enemies be a match for them? As the enemies on the battlefield were dealt with one after another, their advantage snowballed, so they were able to end the battle in such a short time. At this moment, Jade Kong's Yu Yao had all rushed over. Ma Shangxi calmed down, knowing that he only needed to focus on dealing with the filthy giant. He didn't need to intervene in the rest. The insect path trembled as another filthy figure descended. Lu Yi could sense that the stability of the insect path had once again weakened. It was just as he had guessed. Although the insect path could allow Yu Yao to pass through, the stability of the insect path would be affected with each passing Yu Yao. Moreover, the intensity of the impact should be related to the level of cultivation. On the other side of the insect path, a peak Yu Yao descended. Looking at its figure, it was the water spirit clan of the Five Elements Spirit Clan. Lu Yi had never seen a real water spirit clan, but he had read a description of them. In their normal form, a water spirit clan member's body was like a mass of flowing water, with the shape of a human. Moreover, because of their attribute, they gave off a gentle feeling. However, at this moment, looking around, this water spirit clan member did not have any gentleness. Its aura was full of filth, giving off an extremely ominous feeling. It indeed had the shape of a human, with water flowing on the surface of its body, but it was pitch black sewage. This water spirit clan member descended from the insect path aggressively, but as soon as it stood still, its expression froze, because it found that the situation seemed to be a little different from what it had imagined. In fact, the water spirit clan member, on the other side of the insect path, couldn't detect the specific situation here. It could only vaguely sense it, but the continuous turbulence of the insect path and the aftershocks of the battle here were enough for the water spirit clan member, on the other side, to determine that the situation here was not very good. Therefore, the water spirit clan first sent a giant over, and then a Yu Yao, and both of them were peak Yu Yao. Not only that, but several Yu Yao were also preparing to come over. The water spirit clan member originally thought that even if the situation here was not good, it wouldn't be too bad. After all, the battle here had just broken out not long ago. Who would have thought that the situation here would be so bad? Not a single Yu Yao from the Filth tribe remained. Only the Filth tribe giant, who had arrived before it, was still alive. Moreover, its aura was extremely weak. What terrified it even more was that over a dozen Yu Yao's auras were swiftly converging from all directions. They surrounded it in the blink of an eye, and then they launched a flurry of attacks at it. There was no doubt that Yu Yao was at the pinnacle of her cultivation. In a one-on-one battle, even if she had to take on 3 or 5 opponents at once, she wouldn't have any problems at all. Even if she wasn't a match for them, she would still be able to keep herself alive. However, the problem at hand was no longer a 3 versus 5 battle. This was a group of Yu Yao besieging it. Unless it was Rizhao, there was no way it could survive such a siege. On the other side, the filthy giant race also noticed Shui Ling's situation, and immediately turned to join her, obviously wanting to join forces with her. It was difficult for any one of them to turn the situation around, but if they joined forces, they might have a chance. They didn't need to do too much. They just needed to hold on until more filthy race experts came to support them. When Ma Shangxi saw this, she knew what the filthy giant race was planning. She immediately circulated her magic power, and the sea of blood shook. In an instant, the filthy giant race's body became sluggish, as if his entire body had sunk into a swamp, making it difficult for him to move. Lu Yi had already charged forward with his saber. However, his target was not the filthy giant race. This fellow was a little difficult to deal with. Even with Ma Shangxi secretly assisting him, he was still in danger. Moreover, the filthy giant race already had enough wounds on his body. Even if Lu Yi ignored him, Ma Shangxi could still take his life. Therefore, Lu Ye's target was the Water Spirit Clan member, who had just arrived. Many Yu Yao from Jade Conch, as well as his 5 treasured blood clones, had already rushed forward, so Lu Yi was naturally happy to join in the fun. The battle began again, but this time, the Jade Conch cultivator's momentum was unstoppable. Half an incense stick's worth of time ago, when Jade Conch had decided to go all out, she had never imagined that the situation would develop like this. It had to be known that Cho Wu had already been prepared to sacrifice himself. At that time, he felt that even if they won this battle, they would have to pay an extremely heavy price. However, half an incense stick's worth of time later, the Yu Yao who had come first had all been killed. On the other hand, not a single one of them had died. At most, they had been corroded to varying degrees by the filthy energy. This kind of result was extremely shocking and unimaginable at first. However, Jade Conch knew who the credit for this was. If Lu Yi and his servant hadn't opened up the situation, half of them would have died. The most likely outcome would have been complete annihilation. Every Jade Conch cultivator and Yu Yao rejoiced that Lu Yi and his servant just happened to be in Jade Conch as guests, and had rushed here together. They already had an absolute advantage in numbers, and with the increase in morale, the Water Spirit clan member was instantly beaten senseless. He immediately used all of his strength to defend himself, but even so, the situation was extremely dangerous. Lu Yi had already reunited with his 5 treasured blood clones, forming a Black Tortoise formation. Relying on the Black Tortoise formation's powerful defenses, they blocked the Water Spirit clan members' attacks head-on. This undoubtedly gave Jade Conch's Yu Yao more space to display their abilities. After a few moments of intense battle, the sound of Yu Yao's death could be heard from the Blood Sea. Ma Shangxi had taken the initiative to deal with her opponent. The Water Spirit clan member was actually very powerful, but against Lu Yi and his servant, he hadn't even been able to display half of his strength before dying in a sullen death. With the Water Spirit clan member dead, the Water Spirit clan member was in an extremely bad situation. Although it was born with the ability to dodge most attacks due to its race, it still couldn't withstand the combined attacks of so many Yu Yao. When it sensed that the Water Spirit clan member had died in battle, its pitch-black eyes dimmed. It knew that it would be difficult for it to survive this time. Don't kill him. Hold him down. Seeing that the situation had been decided, Lu Yi immediately transmitted his voice in all directions. At the same time, he and his 5 treasured blood clones made their auras shake the heavens. Although the Jade Conch's Yu Yao didn't understand what Lu Yi wanted to do, they still immediately slowed down their attacks. If Lu Yi had said this before the battle, the Jade Conch cultivators naturally wouldn't have listened. However, this battle was won by Lu Yi and his servant. Without them, there wouldn't be the current situation. In addition, they had already seen Lu Yi's powerful foundation, so it was enough for Lu Yi to have a certain amount of authority here. Lu Yi's thoughts were very simple. If the battle here ended, and the Water Spirit clan members on the other side sensed that something was wrong, they would definitely not send Yu Yao over. When the time came, the insect path would lie across here, and Jade Conch would be in a very awkward situation. They couldn't kill their way through the insect path to the Water Spirit clan. That would be courting death. Since they couldn't fight back, they had to give the Water Spirit clan a painful blow. They had to let the Water Spirit clan know that Jade Conch was not to be trifled with. This was the only way to make the Water Spirit clan retreat. Although this location was closer to the Jade Conch realm, the 9 provinces, and the Jade Conch realm were in the same galaxy. They were as close as lips and teeth. In the face of such a matter, Lu Yi simply couldn't extricate himself from it. This could be considered a family matter. Therefore, Lu Yi wanted to keep the Water Spirit clan member alive. Firstly, it would attract more Water Spirit clan Yu Yao to come and help. Secondly, if more Water Spirit clan Yu Yao passed through the insect path, it would affect the stability of the insect path. What if the insect path collapsed? Therefore, in any case, keeping the Water Spirit clan member alive was the best choice. It was also the only choice at the moment. The Jade Conch cultivators weren't stupid, although they didn't understand Lu Yi's intentions at first. When they saw that their side clearly had the absolute advantage, and he was still making such a big commotion, they realized what he was planning. Soon, under Cho Wu's command, the Water Spirit clan Yu Yao of Jade Conch also began to move. They madly urged their magic power, making it seem like the battle here was in a stalemate, but in reality, it was the Water Spirit clan member who was suppressed to the point that he couldn't even raise his head. The Water Spirit clan member undoubtedly saw through Lu Yi and the others' intentions. He suddenly raised his head and glanced in Lu Yi's direction. A cold voice came from his mouth. "You can't escape. No one can escape from where the Water Spirit clan has their eyes on." In the next instant, an extremely dangerous aura suddenly spread out from the Water Spirit clan. His pitch-black body suddenly erupted with dazzling light. Spirit flash. Not good retreat. Cho Wu's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly roared. Spirit flash was the racial innate skill of the Five Elements Spirit clan. They had crystal cores in their bodies, which were similar to the Yao cores of monster beasts. In a desperate situation, they could erupt with all the power of their crystal cores in one go. It was similar to self-detonation. The self-detonation of a PQ Yao was extremely terrifying. Therefore, when he saw the Water Spirit clan members' actions, Cho Wu knew that things were not going well. As soon as his voice fell, the group of Yu Yao frantically retreated. Lu Yi also activated the Black Tortoise formation to its maximum power as he retreated. The light completely exploded, enveloping a large area. The pitch-black power of corruption rushed in all directions, almost turning this part of the starry sky into a black hole. Lu Ye's body tumbled, and even the Black Tortoise formation was on the verge of shattering. At the critical moment, Ma Shangxi arrived in time to save him, enveloping him in the sea of blood. Even so, Lu Yi still felt dizzy. The violent power slowly subsided. Lu Yi shook his head and withdrew the 5 treasured blood clones. He also ordered Ma Shangxi to withdraw the sea of blood. When he looked up, the Water Spirit clan member had already disappeared. Lu Yi frowned. He had not expected the Water Spirit clan member to be so decisive. A PQ Yao had actually self-detonated without any warning. If he did not have the Black Tortoise formation, the situation just now would have been somewhat troublesome. The Water Spirit clan member's self-detonation had undoubtedly ruined Lu Ye's plan. This was because he could clearly sense that the Yu Yao's aura in the insect path was slowly fading. Clearly, the Water Spirit clan members, who had been preparing to reinforce him, had retreated. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.